especially taking us into the focus of this year's commemoration, trust, equity, and local action, and the call for local action to be applied in order to drive change. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me take this opportunity to recognize some persons who are amidst us. We have, I'm told that we have some members of parliament here present. Any member of parliament who has found time to come and join? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the work you're doing, especially of representing our people and enacting legislations in the interest of Uganda. Thank you very much. We also have Red Crescent movement partners. We have the German Red Cross representative. Kindly stand up for recognition, a representative of the German Red Cross. Thank you very much. We have a representative of the Austrian Red Cross. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have a representative of the Belgium Red Cross. Belgium Red Cross, thank you very much for finding time to come. The Netherlands Red Cross is also represented. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. We have other partners with working with us. We have the UN. Kindly, if you're from the UN family, we have already, I know that we have already recognized the UN resident coordinator, but any other person from the UN family, thank you very much. We recognize your presence. Oxfam, representatives of Oxfam, kindly stand up for recognition. Not yet in the house. Okay. Kafoni. Oh, yes, thank you very much. Let's also recognize we have the chairman of the Community Engagement Subcommittee, Professor Omaswa. Where is he? Oh, yes. Professor, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to invite a representative of the academia who is going to give us a presentation on who is going to present to us a review and presentation of the World Disaster Report. The reason, one of the major reasons why we are here. I'm going to invite Dr. Laban Kashaija Musinguzi. Musinguzi is a professional social worker and currently lectures at Makerere University in the School of Social Sciences. He completed his doctoral studies at the Amsterdam Institute of Social Sciences Research, University of Amsterdam, Netherlands in 2016. His PhD research explored the intersection between community health and formal health care in poor resource settings. He also holds, Dr. Musinguzi also holds a Master of Philosophy from the University of Cambridge, UK, and a Master of Arts in Social Sector Planning and Management from Makerere University. He graduated with a first-class degree in social work and social administration from Makerere University. He is a recipient of prestigious research awards, including the CEDAR Research Grant for Junior Researchers, a prestigious NWOTRO Research Award at the Center for Global Health, University of Amsterdam, the Netherlands, among others. He has 17 years of academic, policy, and program research. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Musinguzi Lavan to come and talk to us. And we want to hear from you. Dr. Lavan, wherever you are, or is it online?
Lavan is online and also physically present, Charles.
I had missed seeing you, but you're most welcome. You're going to present from there?
Yes.
Okay, good. You're most welcome.
This is where the technology is.
Good.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Charles, for your kind introductions. And good morning, colleagues. I must apologize. I am very, very poor with protocol, but allow me to recognize, of course, our chief guest, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Robin Anabanja, and of course, the Minister in charge of disaster who is present. And I believe the rest, Charles, will help me to do the protocol.
Doctor, I have an appeal from the media who are covering this function. We are also live. I'm told it's hard to catch you from there with the gadgets, so they are requesting that you come this side, if you may. Is there someone who can help direct the gadget from the other side as you talk? I'm going to turn. Is this okay? Is this okay? Like this? Is this okay if you stand facing this side? Camera guys, media, is that okay? Thank you. Doctor, it's better from here. If you need my help the other side, I can give you.
Someone is going to move the slide. I think I can use this one. Okay, thank you once again, Charles, and like I said, good morning, everybody. Yes, I also requested Charles to do for me the rest of the protocol, so I hope that is in order. When I was asked to make this presentation, I was also asked to, put myself in the shoes of the people who made this report. But then I realized I am too short, but also very small. I realized I cannot fit in the shoes of the writers of this report. But I said I will speak from the heart. I will speak from the heart and speak about this specific report. Charles keeps interrupting me a bit. We can move, please. So I have about 3 key issues I will talk about in my presentation. I will talk about what the World Disaster Report is about and focus on the World Disaster Report 2022 and ultimately pick out the salient issues and probably do a reflection on the same. I have been corrected that the World Disaster Report is actually produced once in 2 years, right? I had mistakenly called it an annual publication, so I have corrected myself immediately. We know that it is a report that is produced by International Federation of Red Cross and also Red Crescent societies. And when I was doing my review, I found that the first report came out in 1993. And of course, over the years, like the previous speaker already mentioned, like the previous colleague already mentioned, every year or after every 2 years, the World Disaster Report focuses on specific themes. But ultimately, the World Disaster Report provides us with data and a very detailed analysis of the global impacts of disasters. And the aim is to promote and also raise awareness. And this awareness is not just for the sake of awareness, it is also intended to drive action, to improve the management of disasters. And the production of this report draws from a wide range of expertise. You've heard, for example, that the Uganda Red Cross Society was part of the team. Different Red Cross societies across the globe participated. People from the academia, people from humanitarian organizations were also part of the team and are always part of this team. But the main contribution, or what we call the hallmark of this report, is that it analyzes emerging trends, especially around disaster management practices, and also provides practical solutions and recommendations. So in a way, it becomes more or less like what we call a bridge between research and policy, that if you actually read this document, you are able to draw from the insights that researchers have put in, to draw policies and draw policy implications. And because of that, we see the World Disaster Reports being used as a trusted source of reference. Academicians use it, humanitarian organizations use it, governments use it, non-governmental actors use it. Ultimately, everybody interested in disaster management uses it. The teacher in me almost led me to ask at least two people. When somebody mentions the World Disaster Report, what comes into your mind? Is it something that appears up there and has no local relevance? Because of this label, the world. How do we visualize the world? How do we picture the world? And when you talk about the World Disaster Report, in Uganda, at what extent do we relate with that? Reflecting on the World Disaster Report 2022, which, as the previous speaker already mentioned, is anchored on the principles of trust, equity, and local action, particularly drawing lessons from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. What do we actually draw from this? I believe the next person will try to localize this report to see to what extent has Uganda learned or can learn lessons drawn by this report. But I'm just going to pick out these key issues and explain them to us, especially for those who might be interested in reading the report further. Continue. So the World Disaster Report 2022, if you read it, it's 265 pages. And I'm going to summarize it in the next 10 minutes. You can imagine the job I have. But the key issue here is preparedness. The overriding theme in the report is about planning and ultimately failure to plan. The International Federation reminds us that when we talk about being prepared, it means being ready to respond. Were we ready to respond when COVID came? I don't know. Being able to recover. Have we recovered? Maybe yes, maybe not. Have we learned any lessons? And what is the purpose of these lessons? These lessons are to prepare us for the next public health emergency. So you realize that preparedness is an ongoing and continuous process. And my assumption is that even as we are all here now, we are preparing for the next emergency. You may not actually realize it, but it's part of the process of preparation. So preparedness also means being able to listen, to reflect, to collaborate, to trust, and take leadership. Who is taking leadership when it comes to disasters? Are we able to collaborate as leaders of, different entities? How prepared are we? Next. So the World Disaster Report 2022 draws lessons from the COVID pandemic, but ultimately reminds us that the world was, I am at odds using that word, inadequately prepared, because I don't think we were prepared at all. When you say inadequately, it means that there was some bit of preparation, but we were not prepared at all ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, when they said COVID is killing people in China, Uganda, people said, oh, Africa, I think people are going to be dropping dead on the what? On the road. But did we even prepare for picking bodies on the roads? I don't know. Let's continue. So what are the key issues that the report really talks about? And I liked two quotations from the IFRC Secretary General in the same document. And allow me to just read some of these two sentences. So he says, we warned, so which means there was somebody doing something. We warned, IFRC warned. Those words are very, very serious. If somebody says, we warned you. So we warned as early as 2018. Maybe 2018 was, again, maybe too close to 2019 when we had, but there was some warning, okay? So we warned that the likelihood of a major pandemic was high and that we were not prepared for it. It took COVID-19 pandemic, however, to make the world understand the consequences of past mistakes and to see that, mark those words, solidarity, not competition, was a far sounder public health response. Solidarity. Continue. Let me read the last one. We know from over a century of helping governments and communities prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters and disease outbreaks, including HIV and AIDS, Zika, Ebola, SARS, malaria, and cholera. So there was some precedent that something of the magnitude, probably not the magnitude of COVID-19, would actually happen. But now we are lucky we have lessons from COVID itself, isn't it? So we might say, okay, HIV was not as serious as COVID. Oh, Ebola is not as serious as COVID. But now we have lessons from COVID. Continue. So the report really tells us that COVID-19 is a disaster, or was a disaster without recent parallels, unequaled. 6.5 million people died, and I think the number could be more. Okay? But the impact of this also affected people differently. Violence, domestic violence. In Uganda, we are grappling with domestic violence. The cases shot up in 1 week. And you know why? Because some of the people that deal with domestic violence were told, please, stay home. We were not prepared for COVID at all. Even as we speak now, many countries are not yet prepared. This is what the report is telling us. But even as we speak now, many countries are not prepared. And yet, the likelihood that disasters will continue to affect us, the factors, the conditions are right. There is no doubt about that. In fact, in 2021 alone, we had over 778 disasters which was a 20-year high for that period. Let's continue. So trust, equity, and local action are highlighted in the report as the key principles to preparedness, and that preparedness is only effective if founded on trust, equity, and local action. Let's continue. So if you look at trust, when I was reading this concept of trust, it reminded me of the days when, you know, in around March, April 2020, when President Museveni would come on TV almost every night to tell us about COVID and what the government was actually doing about COVID. And I can bet about 99% of Uganda's population always tuned into President Museveni's messages. There was some bit of trust in what he was saying that people believed was important to hear. But there was some bit of, every time he would use these words, and therefore, you can relate. He would give his speech for about 1 hour, and then towards the end say, and therefore, then you know what that therefore would mean. He would either increase the number of days, you know, some of us would run away immediately and say therefore, so that somebody tells you what exactly was mentioned. But trust is extremely important. One, countermeasures, including vaccines, public health information, isolation measures, will not be accepted unless there is trust. Continue. Equity. Many people confuse equity and equality. What did we see during COVID? Did we see equality or equity? Look at the image. That image is readily available on the internet. I, by the way, should credit the source so that I'm not accused of plagiarism. Equality and equity. So what the report is saying is equity. We need fairness. We need equity. Because pandemics, like we've seen with COVID, thrive and aggravate inequity. And the report is very clear that it cannot be controlled until access to services and critical products, including vaccines, is guaranteed in law and available in practice. I don't want to repeat the stories around vaccines and vaccine production. All of us were here to see how the world was really rushing to produce vaccines, and when they got them, they said, no, let's first serve ourselves. And I'm told our Minister of Health, you know, also they crafted something and said we are going to produce our own vaccines. The other day, I was reading in the papers, they said, actually vaccines might be available in the next 15 years. Assuming that we had waited for vaccines from the Ministry of Health, Uganda. Where would Uganda be? Let's continue. Local action. What is local action? That pandemics begin and end in communities. Begin and end in, those are powerful statements. The report is telling us that we need to put the community at the center of response. And we need to leverage and also support local action to build resilience, trust, and agile health systems. Biomedical explanations don't make sense for local people. You will go to a community where somebody simply believes that Jaja Mwanga or Jaja so-and-so are the only people who have credible information. You will come with your, wash your hands, don't hug someone, they will not believe you. During Ebola 2012, I was in Rwero doing my PhD for I was doing field work for my PhD. We had Ebola outbreak in Rwero in 2012. We wrote a paper out of our experience called The First Mile. You can look it up, where we actually show how there is a strong disconnect between community health systems and frameworks of understanding diseases and what biomedical professionals bring on the table. And if we don't understand this dynamic, we will again get another pandemic, another epidemic, another outbreak. We will have the same problems. This is what the report is talking about. Next. The report ultimately then identifies 6 essential action points, which of course also relate to what we've just talked about. And the first one is to strengthen prevention and preparedness at the local level. Again, at the local level. They are not telling you about the other levels. Strengthen preparedness at the local level. And as we plan, we need to plan for what we can prevent, but also prepare for everything else. Everything else. Prepare. Okay? Let us leverage the roles and capacities of communities and local actors through integrated community health systems. I don't know to what extent, for example, at what point during our response, and this is typical in many countries actually, the report tells us, at what point did we actually begin to take community seriously and talk about community engagement? What kind of funding was available to community engagement teams during the response period? What was there? I don't know. There's somebody who's going to tell us about how this can be localized. Capacities of local actors. In Uganda, we have a very solid structure of village health teams, community health workers, who were not used, I think, up to a certain point. Their potential was not utilized. We have a very strong LC system, but whenever there's an outbreak, we want to bypass it. Why? So communities were not fully involved. This is what the report is telling us in many contexts. And I think there are lessons also to get from Uganda. Next. Building global solidarity mechanisms enables greater access to pandemic products, but also services. Global solidarity mechanism. Global solidarity. I already gave examples of how countries were scrambling to, hoard vaccines. Protecting communities against the socio-economic impacts of public health emergencies. Social protection systems. How are our protection systems in these countries? The vulnerable, the poor, women, expectant mothers. How are they protected? In Uganda, we had some sort of cash transfers, I believe in many other countries as well. I was speaking to a colleague from Netherlands recently, and she said, during the COVID period, we were given a lot of money, cash transfers to people who had lost employment, and I think the same in the US. Collecting data and harnessing it to take action. We always tend to focus on traditional, epidemiological surveillance data. Once you have known the type of virus, the genotype, that's it. But how about the socio-economic impact of the virus on the communities, the risk, the disaster itself? Next. Sorry, I speak a lot because I'm a teacher, and so I think people are getting echo. You'll forgive me for that. Strengthening local legal preparedness for public health emergencies. That is the other last essential action point. Legal regime. How many of us were born in 1935? How many of us in this room were here in 1935? Maybe a few of us, isn't it? 1 or 2 people probably. But I was reading somewhere that is the last time we had the Public Health Act for Uganda until 2020 or 2021. I stand to be corrected. That's when, when COVID came, we started, what do we do? There are COVID measures, people might take us to court. They hastily drafted the Public Health Act. But the one we had was 1935. And this was typical in many countries. We didn't have laws about how to go and prepare for these health emergencies. So the report is telling us that, look, there are weaknesses in both domestic laws and international health regulations that need to be worked on. Next. So, as I finalize, looking to the future, how do we prepare for disasters? And why is it important to prepare for disasters? The answer is very simple, because our ability to respond is often limited. So let us prepare. If you prepare for something, you are ultimately preventing it and also responding to it. But also, like I said earlier, the conditions for disasters to occur will continue to grow. Believe me. We are likely to be in a disaster sort of cycle, if such a thing exists. Every other year you will definitely have disasters. And every time a disaster comes, I can bet it will be much more stronger than the previous one. So how do we prepare for it? Okay. So the report ultimately is a call for governments and other actors to prepare for the next health emergency. And preparedness is not just an event. Ladies and gentlemen, preparedness is a process. And this is what the report also emphasizes. It is a process. It involves a set of actions, deliberate actions, a skill set, infrastructure in place, and procedures, okay? So that we are effectively able to rapidly prevent, detect, and also respond to outbreaks and these pandemics. Next. But when you talk about preparedness, what we always miss, can you go ahead, please? What we always miss, or we always mistake preparedness with a lot of things. So preparedness, we always focus on the availability of medical products, but we fail to move beyond the availability of medical products, services, and information. We need to move beyond the ability of governments to apply a standard set of operating procedures. Focus on specific needs of these communities. The women in the markets in Nakasero, I was very, very happy when President Museveni said, look, we have COVID-19, but our truck drivers must continue providing these goods. I wonder what would have happened if Museveni became mad one day and said, no, guys, stop, don't come to Uganda. We know we have only one supply route, isn't it? If you had said truck drivers, don't come, because we are saying no movement. What would have happened if you are applying a standard set of... So we need to look at the uniqueness, the vulnerabilities and strength of these communities. And also, like I said, we must be prepared for multiple or multitude of risks and understand that the impact of pandemics or disasters is beyond physical health. Beyond physical health. The other day I was reading the headline of one of the dailies, New Vision. It said 14% of Ugandans had some mental health concern of some kind. And this was, I think, last year or early this year. What a coincidence that after COVID or during COVID, we have this huge number of Ugandans who are reporting psychosocial issues, mental health related issues. It goes beyond physical health. Okay? So when we prepare, we should also prepare for effects beyond the physical body. Let's go on. And therefore, again, to re-echo what we already said, how do we then make sure that we implement or we undertake preparedness that is based on trust, equity, and local action? How do we go about this? This is the advice of this World Disaster Report 2022. Let's go on. So to promote trust, there is need for government ownership, community ownership of emergency preparedness plans. Community ownership. Listen to communities and undertake community engagement. Access to services and education through stronger community health systems. Let's continue. And equity, how do we promote equity? Flexibility, predictability in humanitarian funding. How much money does Uganda have now that you can say this is money specifically for humanitarian funding? When they are talking about budget cuts, which sector gets affected most or first? There are colleagues from the OPM here who should give us the figures. You know, when we're talking about budget cuts, do we still have money to run humanitarian emergency? If we had an outbreak now, the other day we had Ebola in Kasanda and Mubende. Who gave us resources? Didn't we? So do we have a humanitarian funding that is predictable and flexible? That you can say, today we have Ebola, let us channel the resources to Ebola. Today we have this particular disaster, let's channel the resources to this particular disaster. How do we ensure that there's equitable access to information? Equitable. But also ultimately, appropriateness of the response mechanisms and products that are less expensive, easier to store, and administer. Appropriateness. When I was a student, we used to talk about what they call appropriate technology. I don't know if that word still, relates. If I talk about appropriate technology, do we understand it? That you actually design something that is specific for that particular local context. Why do we do things? Because we have, a standard. We need to do things that are appropriate to our systems. Greater emphasis on multi-hazard prevention. I told you there are so many disasters. Even now, I think if the OPM is to tell you what is happening and what they are responding to, they will tell you there are so many things happening. Kasese, Bududa, there are communities that are prone to disasters. But what is important also is that centralized and medicalized approaches cannot address the local complexities. In Uganda, the community that I know best when Ebola broke out, and actually even during Ebola, during these responses, we always deploy our men and women in uniform. With all due respect to the men and women in uniform who are here, and specifically for COVID, the government deployed, I don't know the structures they used or the systems they used. We deployed local defense units, isn't it? And every day you would hear a story of somebody who has been beaten by a local defense unit. Some people died at the hands of the local defense units. And that is because of the centralized and medicalized responses. We don't take time to address the local complexities. So if we are to promote local action, we need to critically understand the ethic perspective and the emic perspective. Even in Uganda here, you will go to different communities that have different peculiarities. Karamoja is different from Kabale. Kasanda is different from Masaka. Communities are different. So how do we say we have a centralized approach to dealing with epidemics. It can't work. So we need to use locally trained local actors and integrate them into domestic emergence and health systems. The report is very clear on this. We need to work with communities to design, implement, and monitor emergencies at the local level. To what extent do we do this? I don't know. The report is saying we failed miserably on this. Next. So finally, the report puts up a very ambitious plan or objective, and they say that by end of 2023, every country should have an updated pandemic preparedness plan. And this should be reviewed to reflect the relevant legislations and also to see if it needs updating. So does Uganda have this? Do we have these plans in place? Other countries probably don't. I don't know if Uganda has. By 2024, we need to adopt, according to the reports, a new treaty and also revised international health regulations. And that we need to increase domestic health financing by 1% of the GDP. And I think that's where the issue also is. Financing. Continue. And then as I conclude, we see that this report is one of a kind. The timeliness, drawing from lessons. And these lessons are basically missed opportunities during the COVID-19 pandemic in Uganda. But also it provides a comprehensive analysis and gives us practical recommendations. But these recommendations also need to be localized. And this focus on equity and inclusivity is something that has been missing in many public health emergencies. But of course, like I said, the report appears to be very ambitious, but it touches on simple basic things, communities that we take for granted. When I was a student, again, we used to talk about the bottom-up approach. I think this is what the report is about, the bottom-up approach to disaster management. How do you plan from the bottom, from the community? How do you bring in place all these private actors, private entities, to pool resources and make sure there is a fund for emergencies? Continue. And all of us, I believe, we know Benjamin Franklin, who was considered the founding father of the United States of America, who said that by failing to plan, you are also preparing to do what? To fail. But ultimately, we can save lives simply by being prepared. This is the message from the report. The next pandemic could just be around the corner. And I don't want Red Cross to invite me after 5 years to read the same statement I read from the Secretary General. You remember? Who said, we warned you in 2018. If the experience of COVID won't quicken our steps towards preparedness, ladies and gentlemen, what will? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor, for that wonderful presentation and bringing all of us to speed with the reality of yesterday, today, and peeping into the future and what needs to be done. Thank you very much. Let's give him another hand clap. I earlier announced the hashtag from the heart, but there is another hashtag that this discussion and engagement is being streamed on. It's hashtag UG Red Cross Day 23. Hashtag UG Red Cross Day 23 as one word. You can follow the discussions going on that hashtag as well. So there are two hashtags. The earlier one is hashtag from the heart. There is another announcement from the Uganda Red Cross Society. If you can kindly pass by the exhibition stalls, they are on the other exit as well as this side. So from either side, you can visit the exhibition stalls, and there on any of them you will find experts who can explain to you the different responses to emergencies and disasters that are showcased through pictorial representations. So, or presentations. You need to pass by and view them. I want to recognize a few notable attendees. We have the Uganda Police Force and Security ably represented. We have Assistant Superintendent of Police, I think, Nampima, is with us, and the entire team. That lady you always see talking about, disaster on our roads. Thank you so much, Afande, for the education and doing it even practically, and all your colleagues for ensuring that we are as safe as possible. But we also have a representative in the room of the Uganda, of the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health is represented by JB Wanyai, Commissioner in charge Emergency Medical Services. May he stand, he's right there. Commissioner, you're most welcome, and thanks for the representation of the Ministry of Health. I'm now going to invite a representative of the National Planning Authority, or is Dr. Muvawala around? I saw him walking last night from Jinja. He has joined the Jinja Diocese pilgrims walking to Namugongo, 76 kilometers, show of faith. Is he here, or his representative? Is there any representative of the National Planning Authority? Any representative? I'm told they are on their way. I will move to the next. The next invitation will fall on Mr. Robert Kwesiga, the Uganda Red Cross Society Secretary General. He has a presentation to make on the URCS experiences on preparedness, responses and local action, disasters and epidemics case. So let's put our hands together to welcome the Secretary General. Mr. Robert, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Charles. Our guest of honor, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, our ministers, our Prime Minister, the Minister of State for Disasters, Refugees. It is a long ministry, so I can stop there, Honor, if you don't mind. Your Excellencies, the UN resident coordinator, the EU ambassador, I've also seen other excellencies in the audience. We recognize your presence. The panelists, as mentioned in the program, without mentioning name by name, all our invited guests, and when you go into protocol, it becomes problematic. Start pointing out some because you are at the risk of leaving out others. So if you allow, I would say all our invited guests in your respective capacities, we know you and we are aware that you are around with us. The Red Cross family, which is a big family, which is polygamous, which is extended, all of you recognize your presence. Our extensive network of volunteers and well-wishers, ladies and gentlemen. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it is a bit difficult to recognize everybody. And as the hosts, we know you are present because you confirmed and you are present, and we take honor that you are honored our invitation. Before I make my presentation, maybe to mention one or two issues for clarity. Mr. Muvawara, the ED, the Executive Director for National Planning Authority, I think the issues of the heart took precedence. He had told us that by this morning you have finished working and join us. And I think because of that, he didn't bother to delegate, so he knew he would be with us. But you know, the God's way, since he's doing God's work, God's ways are difficult. And I don't know whether he's already in Namugongo or whether he's already on the way coming here. But he has assured us that either way, whether he comes late or otherwise, he will share with us the presentation he had made. And so when you are registering, you gave us your emails. We'll make sure we forward this document to you if at all we finish it before he comes. But also we'll endeavor to put it on our website. Because I think it is important, in as much as our academician Sims has just touched base on it, it is important to see how the Ugandan government, especially through the National Planning Authority, they are putting into perspective some of these issues that are raised in the report. So either way, we'll make sure that that is shared with all of us. I want to make special recognition of the government have availed us this facility. We can't take it for granted. Behind the scenes, you normally tell government that we are one of you in as much as we work independent of you, and we should partake all that the government provides other MDAs, but you give us room to do our business without interference. So, and I think this is one of the aspects where, through the Prime Minister herself, and I must recognize through the Honorable Minister Anyakun, made sure that this room was available to us today. Because I knew there was double booking, and the Minister herself ensured that this day is allocated to the Red Cross. We can't take that for granted, Honorable Minister. Again, in Red Cross, we are disaster prepared, we are disaster managers in a way. This date was fixed in consultation with the Prime Minister herself. Because we had proposed other days and said, I want to be physically present and fix it on this day because I'm sure my calendar will allow me. But she ends up in Chankwanzi, but she's with us like has been mentioned. And we knew she was supposed to travel back last night. Then she said, no business, but I will make sure I join on right. But in Red Cross, I think this is not a surprise. Those who know the Red Cross, we always ready for any eventuality, and technology has helped us. And we thank the Right Honourable Prime Minister for making sure that not being physically present does not take away the commitment of being with us today. Allow me also to mention that this report, you may not get the full copies, all of you, because the 260 page report. We have put executive summaries in the folders, But also we had a debate as to whether we should do that. Because these days we are encouraging having papers, paperless business transactions, and this document you can access it online for free. The Red Cross is not selling it. So we encourage that those who would want to read the full detail, and I would say, please read, because it is not like these academic documents which are boring and at times send you to sleep. The very moment you open it, you read it up to the end, because it is interesting, factual, but also interesting to read. So the document is online, and you can access it. I think we have availed the line. Read it if you haven't got the full text. It is very interesting to read. I can attest to that. So having said that, and having appreciated our keynote speaker, but also the panelists. And the panelists, we have the right team of the panelists representing the development partners. We are grateful to you, Your Excellency, the EU Ambassador, for being present. The international organizations led by no other than the country lead person, Her Excellency, the UN country representative, but also bring on board the private sector. The private sector, because you are equally winners and losers if we don't manage these kind of emergencies. And so the ED EcoBank representing the private sector, and amongst the many of you who are in the audience. And so we'll have some time to get the feedback, but the commitment is each one of us has a role to play, whether you are from the government, whether private sector, whether from the international agencies, whether from colleagues in the humanitarian sector, whether you are from whichever. It is a combined effort that can make a difference. Now, if I go in my presentation, it is more pictorial. I thought I would use pictures to describe what we do, and just I'll try to make sure that I don't take a lot of your time. By the way, I've also been reminded we are streamed live on UBC, so to the whole world, you can even follow through, and we thank UBC for doing that, the noble cause. Just the next slide, I would want to start from there. That slide speaks volumes to mention who we are. Who are we as Red Cross? It speaks volumes. Just to give you the context, that picture was taken in 2020, what? When they were walk to work? 2011 in Kasangati. And people who are running away, someone left a 1 week baby in the house.
3 weeks baby.
3 weeks baby. And the Red Cross came and rescued that baby. I think in summary that describes who we are, without even giving the wrong story. But I can go to the next slide and try to mention what makes us who we are, and that we are unique, and we are a partner, and also we are a local actor who can be reliable. At times people get lost as, are we an NGO, are we a government department? And we always say we are both, because we are created by government, by act of parliament, but also we work in humanitarian work, but we are not controlled by the UN, the NGO Act. We auxiliary the government, and I will explain that. But I want to mention that when you talk of local action, the key here is around, we have a network of members all over the country. To date, we talk of 500,000 members. I wish we'd even have maybe all Ugandans as members of Red Cross. So, when you see us active and alive, it is because we have this capacity of these people who are all over the country and in every community. And we can do better. We are not yet there where we want to be. Honorable Minister, she knows you have shared this, that every time there is something that goes wrong in any community, by and large, we even know it before government knows. The question is, how do we harness that? How do we make it better for the common good? And we have a network of branches all over the country. That's what that map shows. And of course, we have staff whose job is to make sure that this machinery works like clockwork. Now, how do we go about our business? If you go to the next slide. So I've already talked about the Red Cross Act of 1964, which was reviewed 2 years ago. But there is also a statutory instrument of 1993, I thought I should mention it, which basically mentioned that the Red Cross emblem and symbols are protected, and it is an offense to misuse them or to abuse them. And we have been having running battles with those who want to put the Red Cross on their clinics. At times, when members of parliament, I see them here, want to put them on their ambulances, because it is a separate symbol and protected by law. And that's what makes us who we are, because then the public, whichever side they belong to, they know that when you see the Red Cross, you are safe. That's the genesis of the whole of that background. And that's what means the business registration name, that this name, nobody can wake up and register Uganda Red Cross in Uganda as another institution. You can't. Nobody, even if you play around and say Uganda Red Cross and say Uganda Cross Uganda, it will not work. And then the movement, Red Cross started with movements, the Geneva Conventions where Uganda is a signatory, and all that. But on the other side, there are government policies that enable us to work with the government and how we do our business. So the National Disaster Preparedness and Management Policies of 2021, but also there is the one of which was reviewed, the Disaster Management Plan of 2022. When you read it, it is explicit on what is expected of Red Cross. So it is very clear on what the Red Cross is supposed to do. This country has what they call the National Risk and Vulnerability Atlas. So by the way, we have most of these tools. It is a question of actualizing them, and which falls under the Prime Minister's office. And clearly again, Red Cross is mentioned what it's supposed to do. Traffic and Road Safety Act, the team there is here, Ministry of Works and the Police. It is clearly spells out what we do. And I can go on and on without mentioning everything. The emergency medical services and the rest of it. So the framework to giving space to the Red Cross to carry out its mandates in a localized manner, more or less, but also influencing policy and participating in national dialogue is there. That's what we thought we should mention. Now, one would wonder, what does auxiliary mean? Because, and I don't want to go into too much English, connect the links of this auxiliary. But without boring you with, it is like we work with government, we work with all authorities, we sit at the table when decisions are being made, but also we make our hands dirty in making action take place. Basically, that's how I can summarize it. But working in a manner that gives us space because of our neutrality, of our independence, of our impartiality. That's the key message I can pass on to you on that one. On the next slide, I will try to, and we are going to make this available just to make sure that we don't take a lot of your time. But I want to run through a series of what we do, and I'll try to be very fast. But the slide which is there, basically we are talking of what are those critical criteria for disaster response that we are working with. One plenary health approach. Anything can fit in, whether it is climate change, whether it is population movement, whether it is pandemics. The whole question of population movement, whether internal or external, and I've seen my colleague, the head of IOM, is seated there at the back. When we talk of population movement, IOM we recognize how we work with you, but also the UNHCR for refugees and other UN agencies, and of course government. How do we prepare? How do we work with the community? But also on how we are looking for bankable solutions. So that one I can rush through it. But allow me to take you to Red Cross in the community. Because the theme is about local action. So Red Cross in the community. Now, under disaster management, the whole question of data collection and assessment is key. Is key. If you don't have data, then how do you take decisions? And I want to inform the audience that the Office of the Prime Minister has started supporting us as to how we can perfect this question of data collection and assessment and perfect it such that we get timely information analyzed in order to inform decision making. And we thank the Office of the Prime Minister. The emergency response, that's what everybody knows. It happens, we can't avoid it, then we respond. And we do it in the community, not in the air. Now, if you have to be a quick responder, and I think was part of what our colleague mentioned, then how do you make sure that you minimize loss of time? So it has happened. People are in distress, people are injured, people are have lost everything, but then you come after a week, you have lost it. So on one hand, we have the team of the volunteers and members whom have said we could do better, and will come up as one of our key recommendations, but also the tools to make it work. And today, we have warehouses in Kampala, in Kitugum, in Mbarara, in Chisoro, in Mbare, in Soroti. We are putting up another one in Yumbe. And we can make sure that they are stocked and we can move pretty fast. Now, we are even taking it a different level, that it is not about moving fast, but also it is about giving people what is appropriate, that answers their needs. So it goes hand in hand. Dear guests, our guest of honor, now we even have a mobile clinic. And we could make the more. You know, people are injured. Every disaster, or every emergency, people are injured. At times, even the hospitals are swept away. You remember the case of Chirembe Hospital, which is no more. So even hospitals can be swept away. Now, how do you give quick first aid services? So we now have a mobile clinic, which we position every time there is an emergency, but also we have a set of ambulances, as you know, which help us in that. Now, this takes me to what we call the area action. How do we do it in a way that, one, we avert, but also two, we alert the public? The pictures you see there is what we call the area action regarding climate change. We have installed this on River Nyamwamba in Chirembe, Kasese. So the first picture is about what we call the river gauge, which will send signals to our system that something is going wrong. And when we analyze that data, then we tell the public through the community radios that watch out, something is going to go wrong. So that's part of the action we are talking about. In the next picture, which you are taking, which also is a new invention. By the way, some of our partners who have been working with us, including European Union here, that have been helping us to improve on this. You see, whenever an emergency happens, where do people go? Where do they go? So we end up having them in schools. Then some schools have been destroyed because either the sanitary facilities are overused and they can't be functional. But also, then you stop the school programs because they are hosting these displaced people, or other churches and the rest of it. Now, we now have a mechanism of what we call the emergency shelters. And these emergency shelters can be moved from location to location, depending on the nature of the emergency, and they can host over 2,000 people at a go. And these emergency shelters, the picture is a bit crowded, you may not see what is there. But it has accommodation. Of course, we separate men from females, so you can't say, I'm married, I want to be with my family. Sorry, that one you wait until you go back home. But section for men, section for ladies, it has sanitary facilities, it has where we can station water availability, where we can have section for children, but also for medical facilities. We have it now, Honorable Minister. We are supposed to have taken it to Buramburi last week, but people had already been absorbed in the community. So it goes back to community. We don't want to institutionalize this, but when it goes beyond the community capacity, then we deploy and we are able. And I think this makes a difference because we talk of workable solutions. Is giving someone a tarpaulin good enough? Because then this person has to look for what? The poles. Then we again destroying the environment, but the poles may not be available. So these are some of the solutions we have come up with that can help the community have some decency and also live not a comfortable life, but something that is not as bad as it should have been. In the next slide, those who may not know, in any emergency, the critical aspect that needs to be done is about water. If you ask me a question that if there is an emergency, what should you start with? I may not tell you food. I would say people need water and sanitary facilities. That is key. That is key. And so we are deploying different mechanisms of making sure that there are water facilities whenever there is displacement, that people can access safe water. So the pictures that we are trying to use for this, the first picture, this was in West Nile. When the the South Sudanese refugees were coming, the picture doesn't bring it out well. One of the big critical problems was water for those refugees. And we had to deploy our global, that's the advantage the Red Cross has. We had to deploy what we call the emergency response unit for water and sanitation services. And within a day, we can set up the equivalent of national water, and we produce water. And we did it. And we did it, honorable guests. The other one, which you see on the other side, which has the symbols of those very honorable institutions, this was in Chisoro. And it is still there, it is still standing because of the refugees coming from Congo. And so people can have the basics. And everything you do in an emergency, you start with wash and you end with wash. Water sanitation is a must. The rest you can go through, but that one is a must. And our guest of honor, we have some of these facilities now, decentralized, and it makes us move fast. if all the resources are available. And also, the next slide is about the water browser. So where we have water browsers, because you clean the water, then what? How do you reach the public? Then you make sure it is transported to the public. The next slide, not the next slide. The next slide. We have realized sanitation is always a big problem, especially when there are big population movements. So the one we are showing there, and when I'm a minister, you launched this facility, so you know it very well. In Mvepi is in the West Nile. Is it Yumbe? These districts keep changing. I think that is Yumbe. We have set up a fecal sludge management with the support of our partners who are in this room. And now this facility can manage the fecal sludge for all the camps in West Nile, which hosts over 1 million refugees. Because sanitation was a problem. You dig up latrines, within a day they are full. Yeah? Then what do? You set up latrines in schools, within a day they are full. What do? You can't keep digging latrines. Yeah? But also, this is a facility not only for refugees, but for all the districts in West Nile. And it is there up and running. Those of you who know Rubiji here on the northern bypass, for those who, as you go to Bugorobi, the one for water and the Ministry of, the one of National Water and Sewage Corporation, this facility is as good as that one. The difference can be the capacity, but ours is even scientific because we are doing more research on it, on how we can use this fecal sludge for something more useful. Is it about manure for crops, because the northern Uganda part is even dry and deficient of nutrients in the soil, or is it about protecting the environment, and then we use it to produce briquettes for firewood, as a source of energy. So very interesting. So innovation that we are working on, and we are working with universities. Makerere University is involved, and other universities that are helping us to make this perfect. On the next slide, and I thought I should spend a minute on this, if you don't mind, on the cash transfer programming. You remember we mentioned that we must respond and support people with what they need. So if you go with our non-food item kit, does it meet the expectations? Yeah? What is there? But so these days we are increasing where possible. There's a question of emergency response you support because people are in distress, but immediate after you assess, is there a market in the community where these people can access whatever they need, and then you give them cash instead of non-relief items. So that's what we mean by cash programming. Cash programming ensures basically two critical important things. One, you support the economy, the market. The local market, that shopkeeper next door gets an income because these people are going to buy from that person. But two, and most important, which is part of the report, of equity and trust, but this is about human dignity. You give people dignity to make choices. Maybe instead of giving them maize, maybe the person wants to buy sorghum. That's the choice. Normally the downside is where men are trying to buy alcohol, and then it is a war, and how we manage it. But on the other hand, that's the way to go. Now I moved health, but there is a distinction between health and disaster management. And on health, one of the key flagship programs of ours is blood donation. You see it there with the Nabagek of Uganda. The key message I want to make here is we have an agreement with the Ministry of Health. I think they are here. And it is like, how can Red Cross support the sustainability of blood donation in this country? Because it has always been, go to schools, go to formal institutions. When they are not ready, then you have no blood. We have taken blood to the community now, working with the cultural institutions, working with the local leaders, working with local, whatever you can call them. And the entry point was Uganda Kingdom, which helped to raise about 30% of the blood needs last year. And if Uganda can do it, why not the other regions? So that's the message we are trying to pass on. The next slide, I will not go deep into it. I think you know what we do with first aid, with ambulance services. So I'm trying to catch up on time. And the same, because the next slide, which is about first aid, and maybe I can say one or two things about this first aid. We have reached an understanding with the Ministry of Education. They have already given us clearance that we should work with schools to ensure that at least in every school, there is a first aid trained team. It is a heavy task, but we never fear difficult tasks, and we are sure we'll live to what we have been assigned to do. On the next slide, the ambulance services, these ambulance services are supported by the taxpayer, so they are free. Yeah, and I think that's the message should be given to the public, that these ambulances are supported by the taxpayer, so they are free. You call the toll-free number, and these ambulances support, but we are limiting them now to road safety, which is a big killer. And until we get more resources, that's when we can diversify them. So those locations show where these ambulances, the routes they ply. And you can see they cover most of the highways where there are these hotspots. And in the next slide, we are showing you the toll-free line. Our colleagues from Ministry of Health, this is a call to you. If you want an ambulance that has taken advantage of digital technology, is Uganda Redcross. You can call our call center, we can monitor which ambulance is near. But also at the same time, we can manage the misuse or abuse of these ambulances, because we always monitor how they are moving. And also, they are the state-of-art ambulances. They are equipped. Nothing is missing in our ambulances. So they are not just vehicles, they are real ambulances. And we have been calling upon the Ministry of Health that if you want work done with ambulance service, with the ambulances you have, you better contract us if you want to value for money. I hope they are listening. When you talk of COVID Ebola, which is the theme of this report, what have we been doing? COVID and Ebola, especially Ebola being the most recent, one of the difficult tasks we had, we are assigned to use our teams who are well trained to manage the safe and dignified burials. And we buried whoever died in Mubende, in Kasanda. Some people are calling us undertakers, but I think we are not yet undertakers. And we have these teams. And I can tell you, because of our precision standards, none of our volunteers got Ebola, and of course none of them died. And this was heavy. This is heavy. At times we are being accused of not telling our story. This was heavy. You know, you can talk of us sitting in boardrooms, talking policy, talking screening. You know, that's what we do. Are we having enough testing kits? Are we having, we sit in meetings and talk big. But the people who do the actual work are these foot soldiers who do the burials, who do the surveillance, who do the community outreach. And who does that? Those community institutions you have talked about, but also the Red Cross. Professor Maswa is here. We have been working with him on how we can popularize the community engagement. Together with his team, I see is here with Dr. Carroll. How do we popularize this and make it the thrust of the entry point for community disaster management, community pandemic management? So, safe burials, record keeping, because people need these reports for surveillance, And it takes us to the next item, which is about the risk communication, trust, the question of trust. You must talk to people and understand. So risk communication, and also making sure that the public knows that you mean well and you mean good. And so we have walked the journey. Talk of COVID, we have been there. Talk of Ebola, we have been there. Talk of any other health emergency, we have always been there. Honorable Minister and members and ambassadors, we could do more, funds, resources permitting. Nutrition program, I will not spend a lot of time on it. The next one, which we call Keep a Girl in School, this is an initiative identifying a girl. So we are talking of social inclusion, but also reaching out to the most affected. In any emergency, the silent killer that is never tackled adequately is how are you catering for the needs of the girl child and women, so to say. And like men, there are those special needs, all of us know it. And how do we make those sanitary pads available, those health requirements available? And so we have been, we fundraise every day. Give us pads, we give, then we again fundraise. Now we have gone into production. And I thought I should mention that. And with the extra funding, we can even increase the level of this production. Time is against me. Let me go to the last slide that I conclude. So what are the constraints? The challenge globally is for disaster management. Rarely do you get long-term funding. It is always about short-term. And if you are effectively prepared, you can't use short-term funding because it limits you as it is. So that question of, and I must say some of our partners are here, and allow me to mention that the UN is one of them, our partners from the Red Cross family. But on a special note, I want to recognize the European Union and ECHO, who have invested to help us carry forward some of these innovations I've shared with you, which are sort of looking long term, not what happens yesterday. Government can do more in supporting us, and through the Honorable Minister and the Prime Minister, this is a call. Even those who support us use taxpayers' money. Now the question is, if we take preparedness, as has been mentioned in the report, as one of the aspects that has to be supported. You created us as the Red Cross. We are in existence because you created us. But also we have proved that we can do the job. We are not perfect, but we have proved we can do the job. And that's our rallying call. Can we, where possible, be given more support, because what we deliver is it on behalf of the government, but also government can take the credit. For us, we don't even want the credit. The whole question of psychological support, but the whole question of the anticipatory budget support, which can come across the board. My last slide, I can see my colleague is getting a bit irritable. What will enable us to do more? What can enable us to do more? I've mentioned it, predictable long-term support and tying it to government. Because one can say, why government? If government gives us the cushion, then we can go to all the others when we already have the starting point. Basically, that's the point. Give us where to start from. You know, these development partners who are here, they are difficult. If a disaster happens in Uramburi, they want you to do an assessment, they want you to do a feasibility study, they want you to write a proposal, they want you to change the English, and by the time you get the money, it is months after. It is months after, you know it. baseline survey, gender inclusion, you know, they start asking you those questions. But in between, people have lost lives or they are dying. And so we are saying, hey, government, give us the cushion. And then the rest, we can go through those emotions like I've described them. Private sector, my sister Marisa, value, what we call shared value. So you are either with us or your business suffers. So if the people in Mount Elgon are soaked by landslides, and of course you lose all the business you have in the Mount Elgon. So how do you work with us? There's a question of the disaster management bill, Honorable Minister, you know, because it will be an enabler on giving legal cover for some of the things we do. You know, our bill was revised. It is going through the motions of assenting, and this is something we are following up with the Office of the President. On our part, we promise and we are committed to ensuring that if we are to be able to carry out local action, we must strengthen our first responders. We have to strengthen and increase our membership base and volunteer base, but also we have to make our local structures more diverse and stronger. And that's our commitment. We'll make sure it happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we wish that we can have more partners, long-term funding support, but also all Ugandans hear our call that we cherish your partnership, and that's why we are mentioning it here, but also the commitment can continue and grow bigger and help us to bring on board those who are not yet there, and where we're not doing it right, bring us the book. But the commitment is that together for humanity and human dignity. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening attentively to the Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross Society, Mr. Kwesiga Robert. Thank you once again. I am about to invite the panel of 4 persons that we are going to hear from. But I've been advised that there is a very short video that is supposed to be watched, not very long. So I'm going to take that advantage to invite all of us to use that time when the video is playing to pick a cup of tea. Which side is the cup of tea? This side. Both sides. It has been made easy by our servers that there are serving points for the cup of tea, both sides. So feel free to go either side and pick a cup of tea. And can we be back here in 5 to 7 minutes and we listen to the panel? It's already fully constituted, and so immediately you serve your tea, I will invite the panel and perhaps to give them a heads up. We will have the UN resident coordinator, we will have a representative of the development partners, we will have a representative of the corporates, and we will have a representative from the IFRC regional directorate. So I'm going to request that we go and pick a cup of tea and come back and have a seat and continue with the discussions. You're most welcome to do the needful.
When the emergency calls come in, the people in the dispatch center have a few seconds to make a decision on which ambulance to send.
I've contacted the ambulance team, they have set off right now.
And the ambulance has to respond in the shortest time possible.
Speed is of essence because definitely every minute counts.
The Red Cross Emergency Dispatch Center responds to over 12,000 calls a year.
Out of those, you find about 3,000 of them are fatal. If the person does not receive appropriate care within the first 1 hour of getting an injury, somebody whose life could have been saved might die just because they didn't receive that care immediately.
So we encourage the community and the lower level health facilities to utilize the ambulance services in the Red Cross office,
because we have the crew on board that can stabilize the patient before they come to us.
We do have 21 ambulances that are supported by the government of Uganda, and we work in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. We have a call and dispatch center here at the headquarters that coordinates the movements of these ambulances. So they are positioned along the major highways to respond to road traffic injuries.
We are normally 3 on the ambulance. You find I am there as a driver, and then we have the EMT, emergency medical technician, with the volunteer, community volunteer. How many are they? This wound needs to be bandaged because this bleeding seems to be a bit active. The public should embrace the ambulance services. Ambulance services are different from the common patient transport vehicles, and if they use these ambulances, we will see reduction in mortality related to traffic injuries, and then the overall health will also improve.
So I urge the public that in case you witness an accident or you are involved in an accident, please call this toll-free line that is 0800-211-088 for response. I know there are also many other medical emergencies, but because of the constraints in funding, we are not able to respond to all. However, what we do support is that we coordinate with other ambulance service providers, because we know KCCA has ambulances, the Ministry of Health has ambulances, there are other partners that do have ambulances. So if you have any other medical emergency that is not road traffic injury, please still feel free to call this toll-free line, and our teams will coordinate and link you up with the right ambulance service that can support.
Ever since the inaugural event in 2019, the Red Cross Emergency Unit has been going from strength to strength. In 2022, a total of 2,709 cases were handled by the Red Cross Emergency Unit. 1,414 road traffic-related cases, 620 Ebola-related cases, 127 COVID-19 related cases, and 548 other general emergencies.
We really thank the government of Uganda for this support that they are giving us to run our ambulance services, because really without this funding we do not have any intervention to rescue people on the roads, and it's making a big difference in our emergency services in this country.
Though the government has put a lot of effort, our budget still falls short.
Our appeal to the government is to continue supporting Uganda Red Cross, but also to increase funding generally to emergency medical services, because there is a big gap. 21 is like a drop in the ocean, but also other ambulance service providers and the hospitals are struggling in terms of the emergency medical services. It's not only the ambulances, but also at the health facilities. When we take there the patients, we see that there are gaps. So our appeal is to the government to increase funding to emergency medical services as a whole.
Inspiring Uganda.
Did you know that our number one value as a nation is to respect and protect the environment? With the current population increase of Uganda and industrialization, this has increased pressure on the natural resources, resulting into environmental degradation and global warming. Developing countries like Uganda could face 80% of the global climate change effects by the year 2030 if no action is taken. Join us here on UBC TV Inspiring Uganda on our Eco Plus program, where we bring you an in-depth analysis of issues that are disastrous to our environment every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. only on your loved station, the National Broadcaster.
This week on UBC.
Miss Uganda. I can do that through Miss Uganda. I could get there. Like these are people, these are my role models actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I love them so much. Like, you know, you get.
I get you. We get to see how much our young girls get to learn in situations like this.
I had a very actively talent-based background. My sisters and I, we are 5 girls.
Yeah.
But then we were 4. My little sister had not yet joined us.
Yeah.
So we formed a dance crew, the Beteze dance crew.
Oh, really?
Yes.
At what age is this?
I was about 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Formed a dance group. Interesting.
And we were ready to take over the world.
I can imagine, yes.
Beyonce is going to call us and we'll be giving her a performance. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that's lovely.
Both Catholic.
Secondly, also with the burials, the dead bodies are very infectious. So if they are not safely buried, then the risk also increases at community level, but also to the responders. So that we did support very well.
Throughout the active phase of the response, Uganda Red Cross Society burial teams conducted a total of 787 safe, dignified burials.
In Mubende we have 563, Kasanda had 450, Masaka had 8, and then Jinja had 36.
But more importantly, Red Cross supported so much the ambulance, the emergency system.
At the beginning, it was a Uganda Red Cross thing entirely, because our ambulances were the first. But then with time, I think after a week, Ministry of Health joined us and Medical Teams International also joined us. When EVD came in, the district set up a call center. I would call it a mini call center. So all calls from the community, they are relayed here. Now, Mayor was responsible for telling ambulance A, move to Madudu, ambulance B, move to this place. And then at the end of the day, the ambulances would drop the patients at the ETUs and they would get back here. So when they get back here, this acted as a washing bay. So they would be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected before you could dispatch for another victim. When we reached the peak, we would have a number of calls and the teams were not enough. So what we would do was to grade the kinds of patients we are picking. We have those who are critically ill and those who are really not so much ill.
Surveillance.
This system is hinged on having community volunteers that are trained to be able to identify signs and symptoms of diseases that are epidemic prone, and then they know how to report through the surveillance system. And this system has further been developed and we have linked it with the surveillance system of the Ministry of Health.
Uganda Red Cross Society harnessed this structure and added volunteers to each task force, making a team of 5 per village to ably undertake risk communication and community engagement at village level.
Now the chairpersons could help us in opening the area to the volunteers of the Red Cross, whereby they could also share with the villagers as the Red Crossers come in to enforce and educating people how Ebola is spreading, how to prevent it and how to control it.
These village task forces conducted sensitizations through door-to-door and communal gatherings, and the team would make an online submission of the people reached on a daily.
Tukunganya amawulire kuva mu byalo ne tuweereza obubaka bwe tufunye kuva mu byalo ne tubuweereza mu Red Cross nga tukozesa smartphone. Buli kizibu kyonna kye twasanganga mu kyalo nga tureportinga nga tukola alerts.
Twakwasira eddimu okusomesa abantu ekikolagana n'obulwadde bwa Ebola n'obubonero ekyabwe bubeera. Ntambula ne megaphone eno ne karekodingi tetwaweebwa. Tubaako bye tutagetinga. Oluusi abantu baba mu maka gaabwe nga tuyitamu waliwo obutale siteegi za bodaboda nga tuyita mu bifo eby'enjawulo muli abantu tusobola okutuusaako obubaka.
Psychosocial support.
So those people needed the support more because they were seeing trauma-inducing things. So there was this point in time when they went and buried someone who was technically decomposing, and they were scared, that lost sense of taste, they didn't want to eat. Yeah, so we did work with those ones. We did what we know to do best in the group therapy. Briefly, then those who went on to seek individual therapy, we gave it to them as well.
We had a terrible burial that we conducted. We went to Kabamba. So we were told that there are 3 deceased there in the maize farm. So people died from there, the father, the mother, and the kid. We were used to burying these people who have spent over 3 days and a maximum of 4 days. But this was terrible and beyond the existence. It had decomposed with a lot of maggots and flies around. I told them, if possible, dress up 2 masks. It was steady.
Mostly people were using alcohol to cope with stressors that came along with being away from home or seeing those horrendous or graphical images of dead people, and the anxiety that comes along being in a place infested with Ebola.
They were getting support for issues that they got because of the response itself. And overall, they felt like they had been loved, by the institution. They realized that they felt good that Red Cross was coming out to care for them, just as they are caring for other people in the community.
The Uganda Red Cross Society also provided psychosocial support through safe places and provision of food items to the survivors, deceased families, and those in Ebola treatment units.
We were able to reach 188 households with dry food rations in Kasanda, Mubende, and part of Chegegwa. And we were able to do this within the stipulated period of time, and all the beneficiaries that we had targeted were able to receive the food, the dry food rations that we had planned for them.
Coordination. The Uganda Red Cross Society had a national task force chaired by the Secretary General. The committee also had selected senior management team members, selected managers, movement partners, and the Ebola viral disease operation team.
And then when we move down to the field level, the structure includes having a branch that is able to coordinate at the district level with the district task forces. And then we have technical teams, that is the operational team, that also further supports that coordination at the district level and at the field level.
In the 69 days of active response, the team conducted daily meetings to discuss milestones. This included discussions of gaps and how to enhance Uganda Red Cross Society interventions in the response.
But I saw here young people doing work in their sections, which helped us so much. If I wanted to to talk about the burial teams. I never wanted to call the head of Red Cross. You know, I call the head of burial team. If I want to talk about the response of what or surveying team, I just call that person. Yeah, surveying. So that one helped so much. So I want to thank you for being organized, and I want also to tell you that you also keep helping us.
In the first week of the response, the team conducted a rapid assessment to map out community resources and their readiness to support door-to-door sensitization and surveillance. A rapid assessment study was conducted to improve the effectiveness of the Uganda Red Cross Society interventions.
So when Ebola came in, we had just to get our volunteers, we tapped into the community village task force, we combined them so that we can try to push this thing hard.
The only challenge was fleet. Fleet. Remember, I'll have now this SBB, then have community barrier teams. The sub-count is big. You not tell a person from the host health center 2, health center 3 that you go and bury in 25 kilometers. Remember, the family members are not contributing them transport. Now, we have to send a vehicle from our base then to them with one supervisor, a trained supervisor, to supervise them and then they bury.
The outbreak was widely filled with cultural beliefs and misinformation, which caused some resistance towards the preventive measures.
Abantu tebakikiriza nti yali Ebola kubanga batandika okufa mu lusaago ne balowooza kirabika ddogo.
Wewajira ne poliisi ng'abantu baganya nti nedda abantu baffe abakulembeze mwe mubawaayo babajjemu ensigo zaffe nga bazitunda kubanga yali agenda takomawo.
Era twasomozebwa nnyo okubasomesa nga tebakikiriza batuuka ekiseera ne batugobayo ewaabwe mu maka.
Lunaku ezo bwe waajira ono eyafiira e Kampala ekirudu kati naye yakwatibwa nga bagamba nti okusinziirako bajjamu ensiga abantu tisigenda mu ddwaliro lyawo newa yamubende okugenda e Kampala agenda e Kampala malayo wiikendi naafa. Ekyomukisa omulungi enkeera yawo pulezidenti lwayogera kati pulezidenti lwe yayogera n'alangirira nti kituufu Ebola mweri abantu ne batandika okutya. Bwe bamala okutya naffe kwe kutandika okubayimirira tubagamba nti Ebola we ayita.
Hari umwuzukuru wanje nawe namutwaye mu Bende afira mu Bende.
N'omwana wange ng'agendako mu malwaliro yasooka mu gavumenti ebimulemesa n'agenda mu makiriniki ebigaana paka lwetwalaba nti obulwadde bugenda mu maaso kusalawo kumutwala e Mubende bajja ne bamuziika abasawo.
On 15th October 2022, the President locked down Kasanda and Mubende districts and directed that all forms of burials be conducted by the safe and dignified burial team.
It became a challenge because we got overwhelmed by the number of deaths. And our teams, we now only had 5 teams, 3 in Mubende and 2 in Kasanda, could not handle. Red Cross trained the teams based on the sub-county levels. However, those teams can manage these other barriers.
At the time of the confirmation, several people had been infected and others with symptoms consistent with Ebola had died. A total of 143 confirmed cases of Ebola with 22 probable cases, 55 deaths and 87 recoveries were registered in this outbreak.
Hello. Thank you very much, our technical team. May I request those who are out at the tea serving point to come back and join us. We need to save time. We have already lost a lot of time. So in the interest of that time, I will restart the session so that we can move on as we keep serving ourselves. First is the announcement, the places of convenience. To my right is for the men or the gentlemen. To my left is for the women or the ladies. I have visited both of them. Yes, you know, as a moderator, in order to do an effective announcement, I had to visit both of them and ensure that both of them are safe. So both of them are good. To the left for the men, I mean for the ladies, and to my right for the gentlemen. May I now invite, may I start by inviting the representative of the Minister of Health to come and join the table up here. Dr. Daniel Chabahinze, actually, kindly come and join the table up here and sit on the seat which is left for you the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to, it's actually already constituted. We are going to listen, starting with the UN Resident Coordinator. Then we will listen to the EU Ambassador. We will also hear from the Corporate Partners Representative, and finally from the IFRC. In trying to save time, the Minister has whispered to me that she has to run back to join her colleagues, and so we have to mind about her time as well. And so I'm going to use my discretion to reduce the time allocated to each of the panelists from 10 minutes to 7. And I'm going to try and request that if you can, kindly make your presentation without losing content of what you have planned to deliver in 7 minutes. So let me now take the privilege to invite the UN Resident Coordinator, Her Excellency Susan Ngongi Namondo. As she comes, let me also recognize the presence of Honorable Cecilia Ogwal Atim, MP Dokolo woman, one of the longest serving servants of this nation and a politician at that. Honorable Cecilia Tim, you're most welcome. Honorable Her Excellency Susan, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Let me start by recognizing the Honorable Prime Minister, who is not here, and the reason for recognizing her is because her office really will be at the heart of making sure that we can really mainstream preparedness across government. Honorable Anya Kun, the Honorable Minister, State Minister for Disasters and Refugees, honorable parliamentarians who are present here with us. I also recognize the Ambassador Sadek, the EU Ambassador to Uganda, the Chair of the Uganda Red Cross, the Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross, the entire Red Cross family present here with us today, all our development partners, all the representatives from civil society who are here, and the private sector, with a special mention of the ED of EcoBank, present here with us today. On behalf of the United Nations system in Uganda, I'm delighted to be here for this very important discussion, occasioned by the launch of the World Disasters Report 2022. The UN country team appreciates Uganda Red Cross for its exemplary work in being the first responder to disasters, delivering immediate, time-critical relief to affected communities. Over the years, through your networks of volunteers, you have responded with distinction to a wide range of humanitarian situations, natural disasters and disease outbreaks, and we're deeply grateful for your work. Our world today is becoming increasingly hazardous, as was mentioned by previous speakers, especially driven by a rise in climate and weather-related disasters. Climate-induced disasters such as droughts, floods, and landslides have become more frequent, more severe, and longer in sort of time span. Alongside, no disaster in recent decades have matched COVID-19. The pandemic really had sweeping impacts and has touched the lives of all of us. The World Disaster Report 2022 underscores the importance of preparedness based on the principle of trust, equity, and local action. Being truly prepared means being ready to prevent, respond, and recover, and learn lessons of current disasters for future response. The findings and recommendations made throughout the report is critical, not so that we don't repeat past mistakes. Uganda, of course, is no exception. If we're all here in the country, last year was truly difficult, and there were a number of disasters that the country had to face. Just to name a few, we had the situation, food insecurity, a malnutrition situation in Karamoja. We had the Elgon floods. There was an Ebola outbreak, and we're still dealing with the sequelae of COVID, and all of this required swift humanitarian response. Under the leadership of the government of Uganda, the humanitarian and development community in Uganda came together to respond to all of these situations. Ebola, for instance, is the really huge success story because that was quickly contained. Karamoja situation was also tackled, and communities affected by floods and landslides were responded to. The Uganda Red Cross Society was always there on the ground, informing us about the emergency situation in the early days of disasters and the emergency response needs. As the Secretary General mentioned, they always are the first there and have the first information that they feed then to the rest of the community. Such early information helped in mobilizing, at least for the UN, a coordinated UN emergency response under the auspices of the humanitarian country team LIGHT. We instituted a new mechanism at the beginning of 2022 to help the United Nations family be able to come together quickly, to be able to constitute itself as it responds. It supports the governments and partners to respond. With the aim to step up emergency coordination efforts, especially for non-refugee related issues, the humanitarian country team LIGHT, comprising of the UN family and some humanitarian NGOs, including the Red Cross, was operationalized last year. It is convened in my office, supported by technical humanitarian interagency coordination group. The aim really is to provide strategic direction for us within the UN and the few partners that are around so that we can more ably support the broader government coordinated response. And at least for the UN, I can say that this mechanism has enabled greater effectiveness in our response. For instance, for the Karamoja situation, we could have 6 UN agencies that came together credibly with an integrated response. WFP, FAO, UNICEF, UNFPA, WHO, for instance. And for the Elgon floods, we had 11 UN agencies that were able to come together to support the Office of the Prime Minister in conducting rapid assessment needs, in delivering immediate relief to affected communities, working with all partners. And in addition to that, the United Nations family is heavily involved in this issue of preparedness and response. For instance, we have UNDP, IOM, who provide capacity and technical support to government in enhancing disaster preparedness at the national level. We have UNICEF, for instance, who provides support in capacity building also for emergency preparedness and response at the decentralized level in collaboration with OPM and district local governments and World Vision Uganda. The National Disaster Risk Management Plan, which is in effect now, also prioritizes disaster risk management in all sectors, especially in regions of the country that are vulnerable to recurring disasters. The plan also recommends developing a disaster risk management bill, which was talked to by the Secretary General, that would operationalize and provide legal backing to decade-old disaster preparedness and management policy. And the development of the roadmap of how to get to that bill is something that we're all engaged and supporting as it goes ahead. I commend the government of Uganda for initiating this important work towards strengthening the country's preparedness for potential disasters in future. I applaud the already functioning multi-hazards early warning system for Karamoja food security, operationalized with joint effort of the government, the UN and the European Union. The monthly early warning is enabling informed and early decision making. The information is further disseminated to communities and informing on actions that can be taken to prepare for droughts or other hazards. And this is an excellent achievement involving communities in the spirit of working better together and building back better together after disasters. I think we do have a chance to build on these gains and to tackle continuing challenges. As indicated in the World Disaster Report, true preparedness means being ready for multiple hazards, not just one. And this was emphasized by the professor when he was talking to us about the report. Real preparedness means our communities become more resilient to climate and other shocks. Our systems have capacity to withstand shocks and transform. We have the frameworks that can handle multiple types of hazards. Such success in protecting development gains and attaining sustainable development will depend on the development of robust implementation of these national frameworks. I think the professor asked a very important question: why do we do this? And for me, one of the key reasons of why we need to invest more in preparedness is that these disasters, quite frankly, are really setting us back on our development goals and ambitions. Once you wash away bridges, once you wash away these infrastructures, people's homes are destroyed, livelihoods are destroyed. The progress that has been made, those gains are eroded. And especially with extreme weather events now, and also the frequency of these emergency disasters, the Ebolas, the COVIDs, we understand they're linked to the climate. We know that we will have more and more of these events. We know. We have not sorted out the big problem in terms of the emissions, so we know we will have them. And I think it really is incumbent upon us to do everything we can to better prepare to deal with them, to mitigate them, to prevent adverse impacts if we can, because it truly is costing us the progress towards our development goals. And in this era of not that much money, finances are scarce everywhere. They're scarce nationally, they're scarce internationally. It's even harder. But then it's really incumbent upon us to really figure out how to make sure that each shilling can go as far as it can go, and how we can make sure that we really build on the synergies of all the different efforts to be able to further advance the gains that the monies that they have can make. But I really think it's important. We might have not taken it so seriously, say 20 years ago, but today we cannot afford not to really do much more in terms of preparedness. As I conclude, I call, and I think all of us call, for greater collaboration and stronger partnership between all stakeholders to ensure more effective disaster preparedness and response in Uganda. On behalf of the United Nations system in Uganda, of course, I pledge our continued support. We're all part of this, and let's see how we can do it better. But I hope that there's a sense of urgency from all partners, that this is something we cannot leave in the back burner. We really need to focus on it and find ways of being better prepared for those emergencies that we know will come. And on that, thank you very much, and thank you for convening this event.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Susan Ngongi Namondo, the UN Resident Coordinator in Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me now invite a representative of the development partners, Mr. Jan Sadak, to come and talk to us. Let's put our hands together to welcome him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. It's great to be here. And let me also start directly by acknowledging the presence here of our dignitaries. And I start then with the possible online presence of the Right Honourable Prime Minister. But I continue immediately to acknowledge the certainly in real life presence of Honourable State Minister Esther Anyakun. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us, for travelling 3 hours, I think, this morning to join us. Many thanks. And also the many honourable members of Parliament that are here, and other senior government officials, even including the police. If I continue at the high table, I greet the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Susan Ngongi Namondo. Nice to see you. And also the Red Cross Chairman, Mr. Halid Chirunda, and the Secretary General, Robert Kwesiga. And of course, his team here, all of you who are working for the Red Cross. On the table, we also have the Executive Director of the Eco Bank, Grace Molisa. Pleasure to meet you for the first time. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the many representatives from the Red Cross in several European Union member states. I understand we have the German representative, Austrian, Belgian, and also a visiting delegation from the Netherlands. Great to see the European Union member states so well represented. We also had the councillor from the Belgian embassy here before, but he actually left. That's sorry if I missed someone, but I'm very pleased to be here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and also together with my colleague Morten Petersen over here from the EU's humanitarian branch ECHO, to celebrate together with you the World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day in Uganda, and at the same time the launch of the World Disaster Report in 2022. As well as listening to the many lessons learned from the previous year's operations, including on the Ebola response last year. So thank you very much for interesting presentations with many important observations. I believe that the Uganda Red Cross is a unique organization in the landscape of NGOs and development partners here in Uganda. And Uganda Red Cross is everywhere, really, all the time, with its 51 branches spread over Uganda, and it's now over 500,000 members. It's an active network of thousands of Red Cross volunteers. So unlike almost all other organizations, the Red Cross never leaves, never sleeps, so to speak. Their humanitarian mandate never expires. The Red Cross is here for good, and we thank you for that. The Uganda Red Cross is an integral and indispensable part of the disaster risk management here in Uganda, including disaster preparedness and disaster response. So it would be impossible to imagine disaster risk management in this country without the Red Cross. The Red Cross is, so to speak, the face of the humanitarian response to natural disasters. in Uganda. And I understand you initially started as a branch of the British Red Cross back in 1941, and then the Uganda Red Cross was established by an Act of Parliament shortly after independence in 1964. A year later, in 1965, the Uganda Red Cross joined the International Federation of Red Cross Red Crescent Societies and has been an active member ever since. The European Union, through both its development branch and its humanitarian department, also known as ECHO, as you know, has cooperated with Uganda Red Cross on several occasions on disaster preparedness and disaster response. And thank you very much for recognizing our support, and I also want to emphasize the support and work of others, such as the United Nations family here in Uganda. The ECHO continues to fund the Disaster Preparedness Consortium, where Uganda Red Cross is an indispensable and crucial partner. ECHO has funded this consortium for the past 5 years with between 2 to 3 million euros per year, and currently the EU has an active funding of 8.5 million euros for disaster preparedness and response, of which the Uganda Red Cross Society is receiving an estimated 5 million euro, or 59% of the total actually, which I believe is a strong sign of the European Union's commitment to localization, but also a very strong sign of our appreciation for the work and the efficiency of the Red Cross in this country. The Uganda Red Cross is often the ears and the eyes of these disaster preparedness consortiums, uniquely positioned to alert and warn communities and the government at the first signs of a developing disaster and to effectively respond in a timely manner. For this to materialize, it is of course of utmost importance that communication lines are clear and open between the different government departments, with the Office of the Prime Minister carrying out the required and crucial coordination role. In addition to our support to the Red Cross and other organizations, the European Union, particularly through ECHO, has also been supporting the government disaster risk management for the past 5 years. The EU has funded the capacity building through training of district disaster management communities and the establishment of sub-county disaster management committees. We have supported, in collaboration with the OPM, the development of multi-hazards district contingency plans, executed simulation exercises for disasters, funded the establishment of regional warehouses with pre-positioned relief items close to the populations at highest risk of disaster. We also funded installation of floods early warning systems and strengthened epidemic preparedness and response, among others. I think the minister is nodding. And this is an important endeavor, we think, and it has certainly worked, though the disaster risk management system in Uganda is an elaborate and quite heavy structure. Ladies and gentlemen, development and humanitarian partners can, as we have amply demonstrated in the last 5 years, assist government in establishing the DRM structures, capacity build them and stock them initially with relief items. However, if we look in the longer term, we see the need for the government to run and maintain these critical disaster capacities. And not only, I think, the Secretary General already hinted to this, I think, but I think it's not only because we are so complicated and have complicated forms to fill in and the gender balances to follow, but also for other reasons. We believe the government could take a stronger role in this. So therefore it's good to see that Uganda has advanced with its DRM policy from 2011 and its DRM plan from 2022. We applaud this. And we call now on the government to put in place the required regulatory framework, including legislation, the so-called DRM bill, to make the disaster risk management in Uganda effective, predictive and reliable. The proposed and under discussion DRM bill needs to be enacted to clarify roles and responsibility of government departments and agencies and to provide a specified and sustainable financing for disaster risk management in Uganda. The DRM bill to be adopted needs to be mindful of the prevailing and future financial capacities of the government, we believe. While large-scale disasters such as the Ebola outbreak last year still will require an international response, which we, the European Union, will always stand ready to support, we believe that small to medium-scale disasters should become the responsibility of the government as Uganda steadily moves towards becoming a middle-income country. Ladies and gentlemen, the European Union, mainly through our humanitarian department ECHO, will continue to support disaster preparedness and response in Uganda and increasingly promote anticipatory action. We appreciate the good collaborative and constructive engagement we always enjoy from the OPM and other ministries, as well as, and not the least, from the Uganda Red Cross Society. We live in a world where disasters are unavoidable, unfortunately. With the acceleration of climate change disasters, and my colleague, the UNRC, also spoke on this, they will become even more frequent and erratic. And therefore, the World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day continues to be needed, and needless to say, the society as well. And we need to continue to respect this and to commemorate this day. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jan Sadek of the European Union. May I now take this opportunity to invite Ms. Grace Mulisa, the Executive Director of EcoBank, Uganda, to speak on behalf of the corporate partners. You're most welcome, Madam.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister Robina Nabanja, the Minister in charge of Disaster Preparedness, the EU Ambassador to Uganda, the UN Resident Coordinator, government officials in the room, Chairman of the Board of Uganda Red Cross, the Secretary General of Uganda Red Cross, the different dignitaries that we have in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon to you all. Sitting in this room this morning and listening to the different data points and experiences that we've had as a country, and representing the corporate world, or what I would consider as the corporate citizenship, and just looking at the themes for this year, whether it's trust, whether it's equity, whether it's the local action. First, I'd like to say that we are not different, or you won't say there's a local community without the corporates, because we are part of the corporates. And just listening and to all the disasters that we've had and looking at the presentation from the Secretary General, first I'd like to say that as a country we are not short of experiences in form of disasters. That we have experienced disasters for so many years that probably sometimes we forget and we feel it's part of who we are as a country. So I'd like to start off by acknowledging the work that the Uganda Red Cross does and continues to do, and acknowledge the work that the government has done. And drawing from the last two key pandemics or epidemics, and I think starting from As far as I remember, I think Ebola is not new to Uganda. The first cases we had were as early you had in terms of the research. But the one that I remember vividly was in 2000, and I think it was specific 2000, where we had, I think, cases in Gulu, Lacho Hospital, and claimed one of our best doctors then in the country, and may his soul rest in peace. So we are not short of lessons, we are not short of experiences, whether it's disasters like mudslides. You've heard about the mudslides in the eastern part of the country, we've had them in the western part of the country, you just heard about the Karamoja experience, and the number of lessons, but I'll focus on what we have been part of as the corporate citizens. I think the COVID-19, if there was an experience to go by, and an experience that no one else could refer to because it was unprecedented in our time. And I think most of you will agree with me that it was one of those that would call 1 in 100. That the closest would have been the Spanish flu. And nobody, absolutely nobody, had a clue or a reference to go back to in terms of how we would handle that. So a number of lessons, and I'll focus on that, and then I'll zero down to about 2 things that I believe the role of the corporate world or public-private partnership would bring into disaster management or disaster preparedness. And again, drawing from the structures that already exist as far as the private sector is concerned. So when I just draw from COVID-19, the leadership of the country swung into action. I don't want to repeat what we went through, but the closure of border posts, of the airport, the lockdown, the longest lockdown that the world, I think, experienced was in Uganda, close to 2 years. The communication, the transparency with which the situational updates that were provided almost every 2 weeks, the trust that created, which is what we are talking about, I think made it a lot easier for us as a country to deal with that pandemic or with that disaster. The involvement of the communities across the 134 districts. I think there were health workers, there were volunteers, there were people that were readily available to support. But when I look at the one big thing that I do believe we bring and we should continue was the involvement of the private sector as far as resource mobilization is concerned. That we saw the private sector, we saw Ugandans at an individual level, at an entity level, rise up to the occasion. And through crowdsourcing, of course, that was led, there was a task force led by the Prime Minister. There was, the President, through open crowdsourcing that Ugandans generously gave in form of cash, in form of kind, in form of time. That the corporate world or the private sector was directly involved as far as communication or driving awareness in terms of how we're supposed to handle ourselves, in terms of what we're supposed to do, in terms of providing whether it was the personal protective equipment, whether it was cars, that we saw the role of the private sector step up more than we had ever seen before. So I think that was very key, and if there's a lesson that we can pick or learn, is the involvement of the private sector. But more importantly, not at the point of the outbreak, not right in the middle of the crisis, but early engagement and involvement, including making sure that there's a framework, there's a regulatory environment, and there are policies that will help prepare us as a country for such disasters. When I look at, just listening to Dr. earlier on saying that the laws we're dealing with were way outdated. So we didn't have anything. We didn't have a reference point. But if we do drive the public-private partnerships, these are entities that are already experienced as far as risk management is concerned, because this is all about risk management. That they can actually add value to that process and ensure that there is advanced preparedness. You heard about, preparedness or planning is not enough. But how do we deal with the effects of that? Today, mental health has become more regular and acceptable, and we can openly talk about it. In a society where mental health was almost a taboo, you couldn't talk about it. So, but how do we then involve the private sector to help us as a society to deal with all that? When I look at the national response strategy that we used, the private sector was active. It was actually part of the task force. And in terms of not only volunteering information, but at the forefront of making sure that as a country, we are ahead in terms of information dissemination, awareness, and where they really had to get deep into their pockets. I think we saw that happening as well. In the private sector, I'd like to talk about something that I think would be very relevant. There's what they call business continuity management. And I think disaster preparedness requires that, or is similar to that process. And that process simply allows you to plan in advance and prepare to make sure that you are always ready. And it will test and explore different scenarios in terms of how you would manage that. It looks at mainly 3 parts. It looks at emergency response planning, it looks at a crisis management plan, and also looks at operational recovery plan. So when I go back to what we have gone through as a country, and even what in terms of the crises that have happened globally, I do believe that as a country we can tap into that, and that would actually allow us plan better, plan earlier, but more importantly, ensure that even our budgeting processes, because you had some of the challenges that we have as a country, is resource mobilization, is budget allocation, that we can actually do that in time, and that would ensure that we are better prepared as a country and as a nation and as a people or a community. So local action, for me, is, and we heard that it's bottom up, not top down. So if it's bottom up, then what do we need to do differently? It's education. That most of our people, or most of what we struggle with, is actually lack of knowledge and lack of information. That we don't know, that we struggled to get Ugandans to believe that COVID was real. That we can get vaccinated and we're okay, and vaccinations are okay or are safe. So education, driving awareness, and again, drawing from what we saw, whether it was the media world, whether it was the media houses, the use of social media, the use of public media, including our very own president, that made use of that and appealed to the Ugandans and appealed to all of us to believe that we're dealing with a situation that was real, that was going to cost us lives and was going to cost us economically. So that's very, very important, that local action requires a lot of information dissemination, a lot of education, a lot of communication and a lot of mobilizing of the communities. And as a country, I still believe we have structures that support that we just need to activate and make use of those structures. When I look at the membership of Uganda Red Cross, you're talking about 500 members, and you heard that is the number that, you know, we want to scale. That is actually a channel or a structure that can work as far as information dissemination or awareness is concerned. We have, I mean, whether it's outside the political structures, we do have the structures to support that. But more importantly, when we talk about ownership, when we talk about responsibility, it can only come from what we know, how much information we know. And are we part of that information? Are we responsible? Are we creating that sense of responsibility in the communities that we're dealing with? So for me, I see that as an opportunity. That the opportunity to collaborate is immense, but more importantly, the impact of that collaboration would actually give us the scale that we need as far as making sure that as a nation, we are always ready and prepared to deal with any form of disaster. We have dealt with refugees from all around us, and as a country, I think we probably rank #1 in the region as far as being a host country for most refugees. So the other thing that I'd like to talk about is, you know, when we talked about the themes of trust, equity, and local action, we saw that. We saw that in terms of and we have seen that in most of the pandemics or disasters that we have dealt with, that through communication, through education, through engagement and involvement, you actually create trust in the communities. And once you have the communities empowered, then half of our problem will be done. So on behalf of the private sector or my colleagues in the private sector, what I can commit to is that, one, we'll continue to engage, and we do have different forums or forums where we engage, but we are also open. We are open to work with the different entities, different NGOs like Uganda Red Cross. We are open to work with our country because we are part of the community. It's not about loss of business. It's also loss of livelihoods that would impact us. We are part of the communities make up who we are. They are our families. They are part of us. So we are open, and I can only pledge that we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to share information, and we are also willing and available as part of the community to ensure that we are not caught unaware, that we have all the resources. And resources, again, you start early. Everything is about early planning, that we don't mobilize resources at the point when we need them. We should actually be continuously mobilizing resources to ensure that we are always ready, because that's part of readiness or ensuring readiness. For me, it's just to ensure that there's that, you know, ownership on our part, and I do pledge to continue to do that, and also work with my colleagues and also be part of the advocates to ensure that we do live in a much safer environment, live and work in a much secure environment, because this is what we represent. Without a safer environment, then we would not exist as the private sector. So without going into a lot of, you know, what my previous colleagues have talked about, I just thought I would just draw quickly lessons learned and how we can ensure that we are much prepared for any disaster, you know, that may come. And nobody knows when that will happen. But I do believe, drawing from our past experiences in terms of community involvement, in terms of ownership, in terms of, you know, stepping into action early enough, that we can actually avert and manage disasters going forward better. I do thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melissa, for those comments and especially for the pledge towards disaster preparedness. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me invite the last panelist, the Regional Director for IFRC, Dr. Mohamed Omar Mokir. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think earlier you said Regional Director, Mr. Papa Musata, and I thought you were giving me a promotion this morning. But I see now you've corrected that. So, I'm here to represent Mr. Mohamed Mokher, the IFRC Regional Director, who was in Port Sudan, trying to facilitate the Sudan crisis, but unfortunately could not make it to be with us today. So he has asked me to address this urgency on his behalf. So let me first acknowledge the Right Honorable Prime Minister, who is online, or hopefully soon will be online with us. Honorable State Minister for Relief and Disaster Preparedness, the EU Ambassador, and diplomatic missions that we have with us today, the UN Resident Coordinator, the representative of the development partners and private sectors, members of the parliaments, our colleagues, leadership of the Uganda Red Cross, led by the chairman and members of the governing board, Mr. Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross, staff and members, colleagues from the Red Cross. Would like also to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Head of Delegation of ICRC, the country representative of Austrian Red Cross, the one for Netherlands Red Cross, for Belgium Red Cross and German Red Cross being with us. And ladies and gentlemen invited to this, I do apologize in advance if I miss anybody. That's just an oversight from my end. Now, one of the challenges usually coming last is you end up, all the points that you want to discuss about is more or less covered. And I think it has happened today because I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of the movement. The EU ambassadors has beaten me to it, so that's okay, all right. The UN Resident Coordinator talking about, bringing coordinate our effort when it comes to humanitarian, but also talk about climate change and its impact on us and how we relate to disaster preparedness. Thank you very much. It's covered already. And if I wanted to talk about diversifying source of funding and really being close also to private sectors, that has also seems that it has been covered. So in that case, what can I do? I think if we talk about, and as well, the World Disaster Report that has been published by IFRC has been presented by the professor, so no way I have to repeat or say anything on that. That will be fully covered. All the initiative and support we work together with Uganda Red Cross has been covered by the Secretary General. So I think my speech here, or my whatever I'm going to say can be quite short. So let me first say that first of all, to appreciate the support of the government led by the Right Honorable Prime Minister and also the Honorable State Minister for Relief, for the support that we've seen and that they are providing to their national society. And I think that's actually the main thing, it is your national society. It's Uganda Red Cross. We are together with them to support them, as it's also a part of our mandate of being IFRC. We can also take this really opportunity to really appreciate and thank the leadership of the national society, because I know to get to where Uganda Red Cross is today has been a journey. You cannot just from one day to another develop yourself being strong being recognized, being a primary actor, a main local actor when it comes to humanitarian action. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes good strategic thinking, and it takes good leadership and strong management. And I believe as Mohammed has said himself when he was here during the General Assembly in February, he said it himself. So I think it's something that we would like to reiterate and did mention as well. When we talk about as well, we cannot do what we're doing without necessarily the support from development partners. We've had, I think the EU ambassador said it quite extensively on the support we received by ECHO. The only thing I will add is you mentioned mainly on preparedness, but also ECHO supports Uganda Red Cross when it comes to response. Because we have what is called disaster response emergency funds. When there is a disaster or landslide or something, we release funding, and usually it's replenished by ECHO. So we do thank you indeed for that. We also have other partners such as USAID on epidemic and pandemic, which has been there since 2018, and I think there's still discussion to push it up to 2028. And then of course we have other initiatives which through other EU members countries that are, in my view, long-term, and hopefully those kind of initiatives will respond to one of the challenge that the Secretary General mentioned, which is long-term. You know, if you want to talk about preparedness, disaster risk reduction, it cannot be just 6 months, it cannot be one year. It has to be multi-year. And more, we are seeing engagement from partners and also interest from different donors to provide more, multi-years allocation, which allows you, in my view, to have a better impact on the community. And depending, and whatever crisis it is. And of course, if we can talk about the long term, but I think there's also a reflection that we need to, I think we are starting to have that reflection, but we need to continue it, which is to look really, and the Secretary General mentioned it, the process versus impact. Because, more often, and maybe some of us, international organizations are part of it, or which is that, we tend to focus too much on different processes. And sometimes it takes so much time, then when you get to the field and you went to help someone, actually the impact is no longer there. Because maybe they got other ways of being helped, or it's maybe a little bit too late, or whatever you're bringing is not actually serving the purpose of what is supposed to. So I think we need to continue discussing in a way that how can we find a balance in between ensuring that there's still the needed level of accountability and transparency, but then at the same time, how we can make sure that all that and those different process doesn't really hamper us and make us like really the action that we keep doing, we want to do, actually doesn't end up with the impact that we want because it's taking too much time. And for that, I think there's two things that we really need to look at is how also do we work. One of the things we talk about a lot is localization. But I think when we talk about localization, there are certain questions that we need to ask ourselves, and some of them are standard. What standard do we use? Most of the time, when you're in the humanitarian field and you happen to work with different partners, and I believe Uganda Red Cross is in that case, and many other national societies, is at a time you can have 15 up to even 20 different partners that you work with. But if they come to you, but each of them comes with their own sets of requirements and modalities of working, what often happens is then you end up spending more time preparing reports or developing proposals than actually getting the job done. And that's what we've been seeing for many years. And I think we need to see how we can really start shifting and having open discussion on how can we really find a balance which will allow local actors to be really active, because you can be prepared as much as you want, but if before you trigger an action, you have to go through so many processes, and then the timeliness and the rightness of those processes are more important than providing the humanitarian assistance, then I think it might just fit the purpose. So the other thing I think I would just mention is community engagement, and I believe it is where also national societies around the world are strong, knowing that the volunteers are members of the community. We are deep in there, but I think we need, and I agree with the professor, we need to do a lot more when it comes to community engagement. I'm one of those, maybe I'm a head of delegation where I'm discussing with my program colleagues. I always ask, to which level do we know these solutions that we are offering actually came from the communities? And quite often, I mean, more and more we're having a positive answer to that, but quite often it's still, you know, we didn't have enough time, we were only given 2 or 3 days to prepare a proposal. But what happened is, if, for me, community engagement is you engage the community from the start and also at the end, and you also accountable to them. If you say, you come to them and you say, you know, solutions doesn't necessarily have to come from Geneva or from Nairobi or from Washington. It could come from Kisoro, or it can come from the farthest village that we do have. I think we should try and push and more onto the bottom-up approach, give more power to the community, because often they actually know better how best they can solve their problem. And I think, and on top of that, having a finance background, I actually believe that by doing so, you might actually cost us less to do some certain respond to certain initiative rather than the way we are doing it. So I think I'll finish by really also, you know, you cannot talk about the World Red Cross Day without talking about the volunteers. And the Secretary General has said it, we have to mention them, because I think that we've had a crisis here, which is the Ebola crisis, and we've seen the excellent job, dedication that these volunteers have done. And I believe whatever they have done, everything they have done it from the heart. And we can see the impact. In less than 6 months, the crisis was over. And I see now there is more onto now how we can continue build on that momentum in order to be better at tackling those kind of crises when it comes at the end. So I'll finish with thanking again Uganda Red Cross for the management for the good collaboration. I think it's important as well to mention that as the way we work as a movement, and that movement here in Uganda, we have ICRC, we have, as I mentioned earlier, German Red Cross, Austrian, Belgium, and Netherlands, and all together, as an example, when we had the Ebola crisis, we all came together to support the national society, with Uganda Red Cross taking the entire lead within the country to provide those response, and we were providing support either by mobilizing resources or providing material or facilitating any kind of discussion or technical assistance when it's required. So we'd like to take this opportunity to thank as well our colleagues from the movement, and thank you very much. I'll end there.
Thank you very much, Papa Musa Tau. Is it tall? Oh, in my native Luo saying, they say names sometimes follow people. So if it is tall and everybody has seen you. Whoever gave that name at birth is the best prophet. Thank you very much. He spoke representing Dr. Mohammed Omar, who is the IFRC Regional Director. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, we are supposed, if you look at the program, those of you with the program, we are supposed to have some plenary engagements, questions and comments. But for the sake of time, I will I will first hold that for now and invite the representative of the Minister of Health to share with us lessons from the EVD response, lessons for Uganda. And the Minister of Health is being represented by Dr. Daniel Chabahinze, who is the Director, Public Health, Ministry of Health. You're most welcome, Daniel. And then after Daniel, we will have perhaps 10 minutes of that plenary. So if you have a question or a burning comment for 1 minute or 30 seconds, kindly hold it, and it will come immediately after Dr. Daniel's presentation. For now, let's welcome Daniel. You're most welcome.
Thank you, moderator, for that kind introduction. And I understand when you say in Luo, I saw you struggling to mention my name. My name is Daniel Chabahinze. Please allow me to request one thing, that you all stand for half a minute. And that is to give me a chance to see whether I have to reorganize my speech. Having allowed you to stretch, the 1 minute is, half a minute is not yet over. It's the only opportunity I have to tell the Prime Minister to stand up, so please, you may take your seats. She's online, but she's also here represented by the Honorable Minister. Please take your seats, thank you. I wanted to take that opportunity to appreciate all the volunteers, all the health workers. We rarely applaud them for the experiences. And what we've just done is to recognize that all your experiences matter, and that is the lessons we've learned as Uganda. Like my colleague who spoke, everything I would have given has already been spoken about. But I decided to use one slide here to take us through what we call the evolution of the Ebola experience we had in Uganda. If you could allow me to just draw your attention to the curve that you see there. In 69 days, the country was able to interrupt the Ebola outbreak. In 113, that's a clap, please clap, thank you. The other key highlight I want to show before even I talk about the slide is that there was no cross-border infection. There was no case transmitted to any other country. That was a major concern for the whole world. Finally, and you may say, why am I saying it finally when I've been given 10 minutes, is that it's all about leadership. And leadership does not start at the top. Leadership started at the community. When you have wrong leadership, however good the investments are, they go to waste. And all of you in the room here are leaders. And you've seen how the Red Cross has demonstrated that with the resources you give them and the good leadership, they have a story to tell. I walked in late, but I listened to the story as it was ending. And so that curve to me speaks about leadership. We, as Uganda, took a no-regret approach to responding to Ebola. Why do I say no regret? We used maximum and most daring decisions taken by leadership to respond. In the red, you see the people who got infected and died before we knew. And we knew about the disease when 20 people had died, and we even couldn't tell the time. But the blue spikes you see there demonstrate the number of cases, and you see in the middle the first case was admitted, way after the disease was already spreading. Why do I want to draw your attention to that curve and then I'll end? It's because there is something highlighted in a green block out there. It's not as clear. We called it institutional quarantine and lockdown. It was the most unpopular leadership decision which was taken. Most unpopular decision, but it saved the day. You have seen how Red Cross deployed people to bury. Every person who was dying was now being buried Because of what you see as the spike there, 24 people were almost identified in one day. But what had happened before that, we mismanaged, as a community, we mismanaged the burial. When they exhumed bodies to try and participate and give dignified burial as they thought dignified is as a community, we ended up seeding the disease in many communities and many people. But once the decision was made that we restrict movement, we bury all our dead by an organized system trained by Red Cross, we were able to bring an end to the epidemic. Thank you very much.
Most appreciated presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. And you have been my most popular speaker so far. And you know why, and they are clapping because they know why. Sometimes the best presentations are the ones that leave you in the biggest suspense. Just as you started, you left them wanting more. Thank you. I'm now going to allow the microphones to move around a little. And may I see some hands? Keep it within the issues that were presented. I see the hand of the Honorable Betia All from Gulu. And I'll start with her, and then there is the hand of the other lady, and then the other gentleman. Can we have those? Someone kindly help give the microphones around. Microphones are supposed to be near. I think let's have that microphone given to the Honorable All. And then the guys that side will use the other microphones. Let's keep it 1 minute each, 1 minute or less.
Thank you. I will be to Chan MP Gulu City. I recognize all the dignitaries. Once I was a life member of Uganda Red Cross. Then I saw in this one, life membership is not there. Has it been what? Scrapped off? So I wanted to understand that. Going back to local content, especially down to the branches. Gulu City has a facility of Red Cross, Uganda Red Cross, and it is in a very prime area. You talked about resources not being there. I remember when I was very active there were issues. This is to Mr. Kwesiga. There were issues on the land, and it was also in court. I have not been following if it is sorted out. But in case it has been sorted out, that was a center which was really good for the young people, and the young people were very active there. Right now, if you go there, the buildings are really dilapidated. The center is bushy. What is happening? Have you ignored that very prime facility? And I'm very happy about taking training of first aid to schools, even if it will not reach all the schools. Because experiences have shown that when accidents happen on the road, we really need people who are skilled in first aid. It happened in Gulu, and sometimes even the health workers are overwhelmed. We need this trained first aid. Is there a possibility of having those facilities of Uganda Red Cross train and have programs for training first aid young people to help in the communities without probably asking for too much? That facility in Gulu City I'm telling you, if it is properly developed, in case you have capital development fund, then it can sustain, it can help to sustain some of the your farm, the farm you talk about. It can help.
Thank
because
you.
I'm sure it can also be used. People can rent out offices from Uganda Red Cross.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable. Mr. Kwesiga, you will need to respond to that. There is a hand of a lady there.
Thank you very much. I'm Kai Christina Chimwero. I'm Chiboga District Woman Member of Parliament, but also the Shadow Minister for Water and Environment. Thank you very much for sharing with us the updates. Thank you, Right Honourable Prime Minister, represented by Minister Anyaku. We are delighted to be with you. Some time back, Red Cross had started engaging us to review the Act, the Red Cross Act, actually from the 10th Parliament. I request that we review such that the services are equitable and are in line with the developments at hand. That would make me happy, and I pledge, I volunteer to take lead in reviewing that act. Then, the other issue is on the delay in the accomplishment of the disaster management bill. We have been all at it. The principles were approved. We need to quicken the process, but in the bid that we are delayed, there are certain actions that we need to take on, especially the issue of harvesting rainfall, harvesting rainwater. Members, it is very shameful that at the moment parents tell children, wait for it to stop raining and you go to the well. In this era, it is very shameful. It is these rains that have distorted our programs, have distorted a lot of infrastructure. So, I pray that from here, as a way forward, we come up with actions that all of us can at least start on in a bit to reduce the disaster, especially how to arrest the rainwater. We harvest the rainwater, we harvest the runoff, so that we are able to have adequate water. When it rains, we do have adequate. When it is drought, we use the stored rainwater. And I feel with that, the pinch of the drought will have reduced, and also the effect of the flooding will reduce. I thank you very much for all of you who organized this. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Can we have the gentleman in a black suit?
Thank you very much. My name is Francis Biwa. I'm the Executive Director for CAFOMI. It's an NGO, but also chair a humanitarian platform for local and national actors. So I'm a local actor. And I just have 2 points. One is to reinforce what my colleague, Secretary General, made an appeal on. The most expensive currency is time. The most expensive is time. And whatever delays there are, whether it's with bills and stuff like that, it's costing a lot. But I just wanted to make an appeal, given that as an auxiliary of government, there are structures across the country. They are not Uganda Red Cross. They are my Red Cross. They are your Red Cross. They are our Red Cross. And therefore the support that government gives to the Uganda Red Cross is giving support to all of us across. And now that we're going to the parish level to do development, even sub-counties, whether it's supporting disaster management committees at district or sub-county, let that even go to the parish level. Because the actions are happening at the ground level. So if we look at the contingencies fund in the Public Management Finance Act, I think, yes, it's operational, but let us make it predictable so that we should even have thresholds of what level of crisis will be managed and sorted at the parish level, sub-county, before we declare a national disaster, for example, at the national level. On the other hand, I really drew inspiration from the private sector presentation, but also from both our CEO and His Excellency Jan. Can we, and I'm making an appeal here, can we draw lessons from the Democratic Governance Facility pool fund? And we focus on a humanitarian pool fund. A humanitarian pool fund. I drew inspiration from Melissa because she gave an example of where there is trust. Crowdfunding, crowdsourcing is what really makes the bundle. The professor gave us a very good opening statement that preparedness is not an event, it's a process. So once we got a pool fund, I think the actions, the support to local actors, local actions will really be strengthened, particularly in information management and data management, data gathering that Secretary General talked about. And that way we'll demonstrate that there is not a lack, but there's actually capacity. How is it being supported? That will now be really drawing to the international solidarity that Professor talked about. This will bring us together as an international community. It's a shared responsibility. We're in this together. So really an appeal that whether it's the EU leading in this or in light of the World Humanitarian Summit, the Grand Bargain conversation, we can have this conversation with the leadership of the RCS office now that we have the humanitarian country team light. That will really be a very powerful platform to take this forward because tomorrow we're going to have another crisis.
Yeah.
Bigger one.
Thank you. Thank you. Good point made there. There is another hand there, and maybe we'll have a last one here so that we revert to the...
Thank you, Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Coordinator John Bosco from Kampala North Branch, the chairperson. I would like to thank Tor and Dr. Chavazi for appreciating the volunteers for the good work which they are doing for our communities. Now, my point of request goes to my Secretary General and the Office of the Prime Minister. Beg that whenever our volunteers participate in any national program, please I beg that you reward them with either a certificate of participation or a certificate of appreciation so that it drives them to do more work for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There was a hand here.
There was a hand here already. Honorable Cecilia has... No, I had not seen that one. I had seen this one. So let's be fair, and then I'll consider the last hand later.
Thank you, Chair. Protocol observed. My name is Raymond Achim. I work for Pride Microfinance. I'm a full-time, I'm volunteer of Red Cross since my school time. And I've served on the branch governance board as a board treasurer. But having served as a volunteer and a board member, I think I've got enough experience when it comes to disaster, when it comes to responding to the local needs. Now, my concern goes to the corporate world. How best can the corporate world incorporate the activities of Red Cross in our different organizations, be it in banking, be it in NGO, be it in, so that when disaster befalls us, we are able to respond as a team.
Okay.
And lastly,
No, can I pick Honorable Cecilia now? That question is adequate because I'm getting information from Chankwanzi, the Right Honorable Prime Minister is online, and I have to invite the Honorable Anyakon quickly. Let me just take 30 seconds. You have had your chance. Let me take 30 seconds for Honorable Cecilia and then invite the Honorable Nyakon to invite the Prime Minister. Sorry about that, Cheng. I'm dealing with virtual challenges. Honorable Cecilia, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. 30 seconds may be too long. My first problem was which way to face, this way or that way. So I hope that will not steal on my time. I'm very grateful to be in this forum to discuss about Red Cross, what they are doing for us. And Chair, I'm struck by this statement which I've read in one of the pamphlets, that we have only 500,000 registered members, but over 10 million beneficiaries. The question which is in my mind is, how much is Red Cross putting in to mobilize members? How much are people or the community sensitized to be aware of what Red Cross is doing so that we can register more members for these disasters? Secondly, I feel a bit embarrassed that at this forum we are discussing of laws which have already been processed by Parliament but not assented to. I think that falls squarely on the desk of the Prime Minister who is participating in this conference, and she's the one to come and tell us why would a bill which has already been processed take over 2 years before being assented. And finally, if there is any legislation at all, rather than bring it to the public to discuss, I think this is a matter which should have been brought to Parliament to discuss and maybe try and help the Red Cross and the community in dealing with some of the disasters.
Thank you so much, Honorable Cecilia, for the use of 30 seconds exactly. May I now, ladies and gentlemen, take this opportunity to invite the Honorable Esther Nyakun, Minister of State, Disaster Preparedness, to come and invite the Right Honorable Prime Minister to talk to us. You're most welcome, Honorable.
Thank you very much. This microphone never favors me. The doctor, yourself. Thank you very much. I'm not going to go through, but all the protocol observed, since my senior colleague is already ready to talk to us. But take home today from the world disaster, we have the strengthening and preparedness of at the local level. This is very, very important for us. Actually, I critically was following up the report from the doctor. Building global solidarity, we know very well when we get most of these disasters, we have to have a hand from the global positioning. Collecting local data, I appreciate this because we are working one-on-one with most of the partners and also our local governments to do this, and then also promoting local action. I just want to go straight away to answer the questions about the bill. The major steps have been taken with government supporting the provision of the Red Cross Act 2020, delivery funding of Uganda Red Cross Society by government of Uganda towards joint collaboration on community level preparedness and also response actions. I just wanted to answer the issue of the bill that it's on. I want first of all also to say my apologies. I came late. I had to leave Chankwanzi very late yesterday. You have to get the permission to go through a gate. So when the Prime Minister realized that nobody was going to be here to represent government, I was given a letter, and so I decided to come and be here. And after here, I've got to go back. So I take the singular honor to invite, I'm seeing my other senior colleague there, this Dr. Acheng is online too. You're welcome, Doctor, and I'm sure you're with the Right Honorable Prime Minister. I maybe give you a chance, being senior to me, to say something, and then we invite the Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
I bring apologies from the Right Honorable Prime Minister, who was supposed to be here with you, but unfortunately at this very minute is responding to issues that have been raised by His Excellency the President. So I pray that you allow me to step in for her and deliver her statement. Your Excellency, the ambassadors, honorable ministers, honorable members of parliament, development partners, implementing partners, the media, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all of you to the commemoration of the World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day 2023 and the official launch the World Disaster Report 2022 under the theme, Everything We Do Comes from the Heart. I congratulate the Uganda Red Cross Society for organizing this important event. The World Red Cross and the Red Crescent Day is an occasion to celebrate the spirit of humanitarianism. It is also a time to recognize volunteers and staff of the Red Cross around our country and the world at large who continue to make a difference in their communities. Your timely response to humanitarian challenges and the commitment to helping those in need is admired across the world. With several volunteers across our country, the government reached people affected by disasters and pandemics in record time. When COVID-19 and Ebola, as well as landslides and floods hit us recently, the Uganda Red Cross immediately conducted rescue operations and provided relief items to the victims. With government support, the Uganda Red Cross also mobilizes for blood donation and road traffic ambulance services, implements livelihood activities for refugees and other vulnerable populations, interventions among top contributions highly appreciated. I thank the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for the World Disaster Report 2022, which contains a lot of useful information on how we can enhance our preparedness to prevent, respond, and recover from disasters. There is a need for all of us to join hands to increase our preparedness to save lives. Response is good. Stopping a disaster from causing a lot of suffering is better. Unnecessary loss of life hinders development and destroys the gains from investments made over time. The time is now to invest in preparedness interventions, equip communities to monitor warning signs and be resilient in the face of disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, the government is committed to continue working with the Uganda Red Cross Society, interventions aimed at enhancing our preparedness in response to disasters. I call upon the development partners to support the Uganda Red Cross Society to continue delivering life-saving services. These remarks, it is now my pleasure to launch the World Disaster Report 2022 for God and country. Prime Minister of the Uganda. God.
Thank you very much, Dr. Acheng, for being ever ready and being able to represent. We're saying here that the theme is everything we do comes from our hearts. So the people who are in Chankwazi are doing it and it's coming from their hearts, and all of us who are here because it comes from our hearts to be able to. So the next item we are going to be here, I think the team on the front desk are all going to come here for the unveiling. Dr. Susan, Dr. His Excellency Grace, another doctor, so many doctors, and me, I'm not a doctor.
It's white. There's a red as well. So there's a question. I need to copyright in the middle. That means remind that. Yes, thank you. Okay. And so, shall we all work this? Odolfo? Odolfo?
With that signature, I can confirm that in our presence, the World Disaster Report 2022 has been officially unveiled and launched, and under the theme Trust, Equity, and Local Action, Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic to Avert the Next Global Crisis. As they sign, I think what we need to remember, if we have forgotten a lot others in terms of preparedness, is the word of the UN resident coordinator who said that we will definitely have another disaster. We will definitely have more maybe pandemics, but we need to prepare. That's a rallying call, and it should be a reminder that keeps ticking in our minds, especially as we prepare for those disasters. After our guests here have all signed, we will invite you to the exhibition stalls. There will also be media interviews at the entry points just outside. And on that note, allow me thank all the media that participated in this occasion. Thank you all in your various capacities, all the media houses, UBC, NTV, NBS, BBS, all of you, New Vision, whichever media house is represented here, you're all, we are grateful for your participation, and we are glad that you participated in this. The audience is online, including the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister of Health, and all those who have attended virtually. Thank you very much for your time. amidst your busy schedules. And of course, to all of you who have found time to come here, I know that we took a little longer than we should have, but like I said earlier, it was beyond our help. So just accept our apologies. Yeah. The Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross Society, Kwesiga, says that the questions that have been asked, is going to make follow-ups of them and then respond accordingly to all the questions that came.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.